Hey everybody, Stinger here. I want to invite you to a pretty cool podcast.
Watch this film. Be quite nice. Have a good time. Be very evil. You'll love that fan housing.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
Yes, it is I, Big E, but more importantly, it is you.
And you might remember me from such YouTube greats as Being the Elite and Chris Daniels Almost Dies.
And if you're looking for the very best wrestling content, you better come to Good Mic Work Commentary.
And I'm just going to tell you now, as a role model, you got to tune into this because if you also want to be a role model, you got to learn from the best.
We have a rapport, and we have been so close over so many years. This is not a cameo or a paid endorsement in any regard. This is a message of friendship.
Man, we met 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Time is flying, isn't it?
I want to wish you all the best in your YouTube channel, and hopefully I can maybe make a special guest appearance on there sometime.
And I used to say, hey, Greg Morgan, and he used to say, please call me Greg, and I wouldn't do it.
Good mic work. Commentaries.
Awesome YouTube channel. Now, if you've seen these videos before, you know what I'm talking about.
We would do verbal chain wrestling. You know, we'd be off in the yard, the schoolyard at recess.
And he's also a 40-year-old wrestling fan. That's a long damn time.
And we'd just be staring at each other, and he'd say, hammerlock. And I'd say, all right, I've reversed the hammerlock into a hammerlock of my own, then I put you in a headlock. And, you know, that would go on for hours.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Raw, SmackDown, NXT. This guy covers it all, my friends. I want you to go to his page, Good Mic Work on YouTube.
Check out Good Mic Work Commentaries on YouTube.
But we would have fun. We would run around. There would be a wooden hoop we would hit with a stick, and it would go down a hill.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
It's a very practical apparatus.
We're really lacking in the world right now with some people that have a freaking brain cell.
And now look at him. He has more YouTube views and subscribers than I do, and I'm fine with it because I played such an integral role in his upbringing.
Don't you dare be sour.
We always talked about wrestling. He was a big Lou Thez guy, and of course I had an affectation for the Hackenschmidts.
Clap for Good Mic Work Commentaries.
This is RJ City, a wrestling rock on tour.
And feel the power.
Listen to the podcast, subscribe.
You are watching Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good mic work commentaries.
Just want to encourage all you guys to check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And if you don't, we're gonna have a problem.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it now.
Thanks a lot for the encomium and the nice words about my father's Hall of Fame induction.
Hope our paths cross again sometime down the road. Would love to shake your hand again, and good luck on this podcast.
And you don't just watch it one time. You can rewatch every single one of them.
And now, Good Mic Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
Happy Super Saturday. What's going on, guys? Welcome to your Winged Eagle podcast for March 11th, 2023. Good Mic Work, Greg Morgan back at you with a really loaded episode this week. Tons of stuff to get into. We've got WrestleMania on the horizon. We got tons of results. Big week of wrestling across Raw, AEW, and SmackDown this week. We have a lot of wrestling news, interesting stuff regarding Vince McMahon and his mustache showing back up in WWE at Monday Night Raw this week. We'll talk WWE betting, offer our condolences to Arn Anderson and his family, talk a little bit about AEW, the Elite, Chris Jericho, and CM Punk. We'll talk about Backlash, King and Queen of the Ring, and a lot of WrestleMania stuff, in terms of the matches that are still left to be booked, the Bloodline stuff, where Cody and Sammy sit right now in their feud with the Bloodline, the amazing unbelievably emotional and cinematic ending to this past week's Monday Night Raw, which was just fantastic. Austin and Theory had a great promo exchange this week on TV as well. Lots of stuff to talk about, and that's what we're here to do. And it's going to be a big weekend because we're going to be here tomorrow night watching a classic WrestleMania as well. So I just want to say welcome, and I want to catch my breath because sometimes doing things live, I think there was about 30 seconds left in the countdown, and I realized I had no water. So I ran all the way down my stairs, down the steps, into the fridge, grabbed it open, poured it, ran all the way back up here, and got us live. And I'm a little out of breath, so I'm just trying to catch up here. But it should be a nice long podcast. I do have to work tonight, but I'm in no rush, so we'll probably take a good 2 hours to get through all this stuff, discuss things, hang out, and just have a nice casual Saturday, because I want to apologize for last week. Last week still bothers me. Unfortunately, I bought a brand new computer, big new mega machine, to really increase my performance here as I produce podcasts and YouTube. This isn't a change that is going to be really visible to any viewers. It's just going to be for me personally, in terms of performance and things like that. There are some cosmetic changes also happening right now. New channel avatar, animated bumper, going to change up the channel look a little bit. That's all happening now. But in terms of the purchase that I made, it was really just for me behind the scenes. Well, it showed up last Friday, one day before yesterday's podcast, which I was afraid of. So I thought I could have it all set up, dialed in by the time we reached Saturday's podcast. I should have known better. I should have just done everything on the old machine last week, because we did have a few audio problems, some settings that I hadn't quite tweaked out yet and figured out with the new setup and everything, and I tried to go live probably sooner than I should have on the new computer. So because of that, we had some audio feedback on the microphone, some settings that I didn't have time to really dial in. I thought they were good. I did a check. They sounded fine. And then when I listened to it back, it was really bad. So I didn't even push the podcast out last week to the podcast sites. I didn't put up on my website. It really, really bugged me. We kind of had things a little bit figured out for the next day for the Revolution reaction, but I fucked up that too, because my new editing software, I hadn't gotten my new stuff yet, so I tried to edit a mic drop on the new computer with my old software, and it just wasn't cooperating, and so that got screwed up. So I had all sorts of technical difficulties this week with the new setup, and I want to apologize for how that affected you guys. But I think we're good to go now. I think everything's fine. I want to make sure I can be heard. There I am. I can see myself. I can hear myself. You guys should be able to see and hear me too, and we're good to go. It should be a fun weekend of wrestling on the channel. Tomorrow night, we are going to watch WrestleMania 2000, WrestleMania 16. That's what we're going to be watching tomorrow night. And I put up a YouTube poll the other day asking you guys which WrestleMania should we watch, 15 or 16, and you guys unanimously chose WrestleMania 16, about 500 votes or so on that one. I was kind of hoping to do WrestleMania 15 because I was there in Philadelphia. We might still get to that one, but the last couple of WrestleManias that we've watched together have been good ones. So we're due for a shitty one, and WrestleMania 2000, WrestleMania 16 is not really highly regarded as one of the better WrestleManias, and I don't believe a singles match even exists on that show. I have a lot of fond memories of that event. The big 8-hour-long all-day pre-show that they did that year was very interesting, very unique, and I ordered it and watched WrestleMania all day that day and have a lot of fond memories of that year's WrestleMania 2000, so we will be watching that tomorrow night. I did not put a link in the description, but the link is up on the YouTube channel right now, so you can save that for tomorrow. And join us tomorrow at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific for a WrestleMania 2000 watch-along. I also want to say hello to everybody that's hanging out today in the chat, specifically our lovely channel members. Zach Palgett, Zane G, and Red Raven Rucker, want to welcome you guys first, as well as Tatanani. We've got the Juliet in the house. We also have Isaac and George Morris rounding out the channel members early here, along with Ken Webb. George drops in $5 and says, "Hey, Greg, how are you doing, and how is Tito? I bought WWE 2K23 Icon Edition for $120. On my way home from work, I saw a guy running from police handcuffed. I think that was my cousin Jeff. Hopefully he got away. He's always looking for trouble, that guy, I swear. $120. I didn't realize that's how much video games cost these days. As you know, I don't play them. But I hope that is a good deal for your $120. Tito, of course, he's the man. He's been, it's about 3 months now since Bub passed away, and Tito has been just unbelievably helpful, and he's kind of changed a little bit. He's kind of graduated to the number one, and he knows it, and his love and his support has really helped get me through the loss of his brother. So Tito is fantastic. George, thank you for asking, and that reminds me, hours and hours before we went live, I had a super chat in here from somebody. I'm going to have to dig and find that. I know I owe somebody a chat from earlier. We'll try to get to that before the end of the podcast here. Also want to welcome Chaz Medeiros and Nick Musser in the house to round out some more channel members. Also, Alex Dredge, Sonic Plays, Rodrigo Testosterone, William Cullen, King Azza, Sonic Plays, Danny Allmark, William Cullen, JL, Big J, Navid, Andy Linnell, Nikolai, David Brown, Beetle 911, Joe Brill, Destiny, Mohammed, everybody else chiming in, saying hello in the chat. Good to see you. Happy weekend. Thank you so much for being here. Like I said, should be a fun, loaded podcast that is going to require some feedback from some of you guys because there's a lot of interesting topics here that I think a lot of people are going to have differing opinions on. So we'll get into that as we go. Should be a fun episode. Also want to let you guys know a little bit about WrestleMania weekend. Those of you who are going to WrestleMania and you would like to meet up, hit me with a DM on the socials, either on Instagram or on Twitter. I also have a post up on YouTube right now that you can respond to. Try and get my WrestleMania weekend plans in place because I know a lot of you guys who are going want to meet up and hang out and that sort of thing. And I haven't really even known what I was going to be doing yet, aside from WrestleMania itself on Saturday and Sunday. But during the day, I got to do something. At night, I got to do something. So finally starting to put all that together now. I'm going to be attending WrestleCon. Looks like a blast. I wasn't sure if we would do WrestleCon. Shows on the East Coast, or I'm sorry, on the West Coast suck because it starts at 4 o'clock and anything you do has to be super early in the morning and all that. But I think it's still going to be fun. Elizabeth and I are going to go to WrestleCon and walk around Saturday and Sunday. So if you are attending WrestleCon, you can hit me up. We'll meet up there. I've got some friends at the show, Brian Zane, a few other people that I plan on meeting up with and saying hello to. So we're going to be hanging out there on Saturday and Sunday prior to WrestleMania. I will also be getting into town into LA on Friday night or Friday afternoon. So we're going to be hanging out Friday night, probably somewhere around Staples Center. Not going to go to SmackDown in the Hall of Fame. Thought about it, but I don't want to burn myself out. So we're probably just going to hang out. Got a couple of subscribers, my buddy Amato, and a couple of other people who have spoken to me about Friday night. We're just going to go hang around some sort of bar. Haven't figured out a place yet. I'll start looking around, find a location, let you guys know where it's going to be. We'll be hanging around there, you know, during and around the time that SmackDown in the Hall of Fame is airing. If you guys want to stop by, have a cold one with us, hang out. If not, we'll be walking around WrestleCon on Saturday and Sunday, and also WrestleMania itself on Saturday and Sunday. We can always meet up at SoFi, say hello, take a picture, whatever you want to do. Looking forward to meeting many of you who've been hitting me up on the socials, letting me know that you're going to be there. It's going to be cool. Really looking forward to it. And WrestleMania is creeping up. We're talking 3 weeks away for a wild weekend in Los Angeles, and Greg is ready for it. In terms of where we're staying, we're actually staying closer to SoFi than downtown LA. So our hotel, we're staying at the Hyatt House. It's about 2-3 miles down the road from SoFi. So we're not really in the downtown LA area, but we can be driving down there for meetups and hangouts, which is what we're going to be doing for the WrestleCon stuff and the Friday night stuff. So that is the plan as we sit right now for WrestleMania. But if you need any more specifics, just hit me up privately and we will be meeting up. It's been great to hang out with fans. Last couple times I was in LA, also Vegas was a blast hanging out with people and just talking wrestling. It's fun. So WrestleMania should be no different. I'm looking forward to going to my first WrestleMania since 1999, my first WrestleMania in 24 years, nearly a quarter century since I was at WrestleMania 15 in Philly. So that's kind of the latest there with the channel, with the schedule this week. In terms of next week, no plans for a Raw reaction or Raw review on Monday. We'll be here for Dynamite on Wednesday as well, but I'm sure there will be other content, mic drops, things like that hitting the channel, which does remind me about something, and I'll let the patrons know about this. I've been working on doing some of the reactions, putting them up on Bald Guy Wrestling and putting the unedited versions up clean for everybody who subscribes on Patreon, which you can subscribe and get access to this stuff for as little as $1 a month. That's all it takes, and I allow all patrons to have access to this. Now that I've gotten the new machine set up, I'll start getting back into that. I think we have 4 reactions up on the channel right now. I'll keep working on that, sticking them out, putting them out to Patreon, putting them out to Bald Guy, just for extra content here and there whenever I have time to edit that stuff. So that's also something I wanted to let you guys know about, and I wanted to thank all of the current supporters on the Patreon page. We are trying to resurrect the Patreon channel, or the Patreon page. I always call it a channel, but the Patreon account that has laid dormant for years. A lot of you guys still support the channel through that platform, and I've never really offered a whole lot of perks to that side of things. But now that I'm doing the reactions and playing around with some extra kind of bonus content, I thought that would be the perfect place to put that stuff. That way, at least gives you guys some sort of an incentive for subscribing. And we're starting to take in more patrons again, which is great because I don't blame anybody who canceled their accounts or anything like that. We haven't really offered a whole lot on the Patreon page. And since we started the channel memberships, really no reason to do both. But I appreciate those of you who do. Anthony Del Petra, or Priti, I want to thank you very much. Paul Carpenter, John J.E. Dennett, William, Brandon Allen, Ramon Coffey, Joseph Hudson, Chris Broski, Divine Ricks, Ryan, Nikita Abalakin, Chris Miner, Super Fluffy Toaster, Alan Carter, Brandon Yelverton, Nick Musser, K-Dog's Kennel. Might be up there. K-Dog, you're a $20 a month of her. Thank you so much, Kevin. You are the best, dude. Ryan Y., Colin Sturcio, also new, John Redifer, Claudio Clavidetcher, Daniel Rodriguez, Reese Jones, Josiah Blevins, John Riffle, Michael Kumo, Naveed, and Blake Moran. Thank you for all of the support and all of the new Patreon supporters coming in the last couple of weeks since we've been doing this. Also, I want to shout out the channel members. Thank you, guys. I am going to be working on a new channel member video and altering up some of those perks for the channel members, because right now all we're really doing is members only watch alongs. Speaking of which, I think we're due for one next Sunday. So a week from tomorrow, we're probably going to do double duty. I'll come up here in the afternoon for a members only watch along, and we're going to do a Raw after WrestleMania. There is currently a post up on Patreon right now, or I'm sorry, up on YouTube right now for members only to give me suggestions for a night after Mania show. I'm really looking at two shows in particular, 1998 in 2001. The Raws after WrestleMania 14 and WrestleMania 17 both look pretty attractive. Somebody mentioned the Raw after WrestleMania 19. The only thing I want to do, though, is I want to keep it to a 2-hour show, not a 3. We made that mistake a couple of weeks ago, and that day was way too long. So as long as we can have a 2-hour Raw after WrestleMania, we're going to watch that 1 week from tomorrow. And that post is up on YouTube on the community tab right now. You can throw out your suggestions if you have any better ones, but otherwise, if you don't, I think I'm really looking at 98, the reforming of the DX Army, or Triple H taking the ball and running with DX, and Austin coming out with the Winged Eagle title for the final time. That was a big night, a lot of energy. That's one of the first nights that Raw after Mania felt like a Raw after Mania in terms of the energy and the vibe. So that's the one I'm leaning towards, unless the members who really are in control and in charge here give me a better idea or say, no, good mic work, that one's dumb, do this one instead. We'll see. Either way, we're doing a members only watch along 1 week from tomorrow right here on the channel. And speaking of the members, I'll shout these guys out, then I'll shut up. We'll get into the wrestling news. I want to thank Ian Dunn, Leo Whalen, Big Mike ATP, Mike, Jamal Garcon, Deshaun Robinson, Chaz Medeiros, Ian Joe Dunn, Motown Slim, Ken Webb, Titanium Titan, Mango Salsa, Josiah Blevins, Kevin, Red Raven Rucker, Ramon Coffey, MJ Parker, Ruben Litton, Fox Star Killer, The Juliet, Brandon Collier, Alan Carter, Randall Yates, Zach Palgett, Dre, Sean 2018, Jordan Karg, Jennifer, Financial Truth Academy, Devlin Husband, Michael Tong, Longboard, Angie, Sam Paboon, Jeff McMahon, Mikey Too Cool, Luke McAllister, Nick, Tar Brehan, Zelius Ward, William, Bo Klavlovic, Al Ramos Pro, Zach H., Chris Miner, Mike Witt, Jimmy Anderson, C-Mac, Mab, Joshua Aparicio, my boy, How Wheezy, Spaz Phoenix, Ronnie, my other boy, Nicole Lensing, Marcus the Entertainer, Nikita Abalakin, Divine Ricks, Zane G, Chris Barrera, Michael Cuomo, John J.E. Dennett, S. Tatanani, Nick Musser, K-Dog's Kennel. You're doing both, man. Get rid of one of those, dude. You ain't got to do all that. Max Pokebra, Spectra, Reese Jones, Victor, Isaac, George Morris, Population 420, JJ Leg, my friends, my family, thank you so much. Your contributions are endlessly appreciated here, and very happy for all you guys do for the channel. The channel's doing well. Subscribers are up, views are up, everything is up for 2023. This is the way YouTube goes. Sometimes things are really great on the channel, and sometimes they suck ass. Right now, we're in a time where things are great, which is perfect timing because it's WrestleMania time, and we should be doing pretty good numbers here on the channel. So thank you, and welcome to all of the new subscribers as well. You know what I need here. I need likes. I need subscribers, so you can do those things. No pressure on the Patreon or channel member stuff. Just give me your eyes, your ears, your likes, and your subscriptions. And I don't really want too much else, unless you're just really, really awesome people and you want to support. Other than that, I'm happy with very little, and I'm pretty easy to please. Anyway, let's get into what we are here to talk about today. Let's start with wrestling news, I guess. I want to open up with some sad news, and I just want to offer my condolences, our condolences to the family of Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson tweeted out about 6 hours ago, tweeted out early this morning. And I quote, "Last night, my family suffered a loss that should never be felt by any parent. Our older son, Barrett, passed away. I am struggling to write this. Tell those you love that you love them. Barrett was just 37. So Barrett is the older son of Brock Anderson. I don't know how many sons Arn has in total. I think just 2. And he posted a picture of what I believe was Brock and Barrett and their mom. That's just sad. No news on what the cause of death here is. It's just sad either way. A heart goes out to Arn Anderson, who's one of the best, one of my favorites of all time. Legendary Hall of Fame 4 Horseman wrestler, the Enforcer, who still has a presence on TV and did even up as recently as a couple of years ago with Cody Rhodes, and I still think has a role in AEW, and of course has his podcast, and everybody likes Arn. Arn is always just a really easy guy to listen to. He's a great storyteller, one of the better and more respected wrestlers of that era of his time, and just a credit to the business, and hate to hear about that stuff, and my heart is just gutted for him. So I'm sure we might hear some more details about, maybe the cause of death and even the circumstances surrounding this in the future. But, for right now, it's just important that we all remember and send love to Arn Anderson and his family and offer condolences to everybody who knew Barrett, because that is an absolute shame. We just had Kevin Nash, of course, lost his son a few months back. And you never just like to see any wrestlers go through the loss of a family member, a close family member. Lots of wrestlers have lost siblings, Kurt Angle and Bret Hart, and lots of guys have lost Undertaker right before his WrestleMania match with AJ Styles, lost his brother. So there's lots of tragedy in wrestling with the people that we watch on TV all the time. And you always feel bad when you hear something like that. So just wanted to offer our condolences before we did anything else in terms of the wrestling news to Arn Anderson and his family. Rest in peace to Barrett. We got to start with probably what I consider to be the story of the week, although maybe after last night on SmackDown, it's not so much the story of the week anymore, because I think a lot of the concern and worry about Vince McMahon's appearance last week at Monday Night Raw, not on TV, but behind the scenes. Nobody really knew what that truly meant, because you couldn't trust what WWE was saying about it. The big thing was going to be if he was on SmackDown or not. And apparently he was not at the show last night. From what I understand, unless there's some big story that I'm missing, it does not look like Vince was at SmackDown last night. He was at Raw this past week. Raw was in Boston, which isn't far at all from where WWE operates and where Vince McMahon probably lives, although he might be hanging out in Florida these days. I don't know. And of course, John Cena was on the show. So, Vince McMahon was reportedly at the show, was seen there. We heard confirmation from that from a few people online. I know Sean had said something, and I think Meltzer knew that he was there, and some people were letting it be known that Vince is walking around and he's here. And apparently he is sporting a porn stash. Of all people, this guy who has had an endless river of scandals and hush money payments, all due to his horniness, is now going to have a 1970s porno mustache, and he's going to show up to WWE that way. What that must have looked like. Apparently all the pictures floating around are all fakes. Nobody has seen an actual photo of Vince with this new mustache, but a lot of people said that he looked different, and I've even said that about Vince even before he left and before he was pushed out. Even his demeanor on TV, he's showing his age. I mean, Vince McMahon, everybody says he's a freak of nature and he's built differently, and that's true, but nobody, no matter who you are, can outrun or outlive or defeat Father Time in any sort of a match. And even Vince, as invincible as he seems at times, is not going to be invincible to getting old. And he's starting to look it. His eyebrows are going to shit. He's wrinkly. He's crazy looking. He's mumbling everything he says now. He's really starting to show his age. So imagine what this guy looked like backstage with a mustache, maybe even dressed a little bit differently, and not in any sort of position of authority in terms of being there telling people what to do. Now, apparently, the story that WWE is giving is that Vince McMahon was just there to visit his friend John Cena, which probably is true, but I think also might have been a cover. I mean, John Cena did spend Vince McMahon's last birthday with him. I think him and Brock took Vince out to McDonald's and they played in the playground and everything, had a blast together, and had some, nice milkshakes before they all said goodbye. But I think that's more of an excuse, Cena being there as a reason to get Vince in the door. And I think a lot of it could have been just them gauging how the talent would react, how the the WWE staff would react to having his presence there. They said that apparently he was not shying away from talking to anybody. He sat at Gorilla all night, which where else is he going to sit, really? If he's, pushed Bruce and Triple H out of the way and he's right there in front of all the monitors, wearing all the headsets, calling all the shots, that's one thing. But I think if Vince is going to be there, it's not like he's going to be in the back, hanging out in the locker room with people or in catering, eating some salad with with Dana Brooke. I mean, he's going to be there at Gorilla right in the mix because he's Vince McMahon. He owns the damn place. So I wasn't too concerned with them saying he was at Gorilla because where else would he be? But at the same time, it's like, what the fuck is he doing there? Like, don't do this. This makes me so ridiculously nervous. Now, I've got an open mind about things. I'm not just going to immediately panic and go into full meltdown mode. Vince is back. It's all over now. Brock and Omos is all you need to know to tell you that Vince is back. That's such just a one-dimensional, simple line of thinking that just has to go a little bit deeper than that for me. So I'm not going to freak out or anything. I'm very, very, very uncomfortable with the idea of Vince being there. But at the end of the day, if he was just there to show his face, see John Cena, and not get involved, I don't see what the harm is. Although a guy like Vince McMahon, who micromanages so much from a creative aspect and has been known to completely fly off the rails and tear up scripts and change up television, literally minutes sometimes before people are going out there, how is a guy who has been that high strung going to be able to come back into that old environment and sit there and keep his mouth shut? I mean, apparently that's what he did, but just from a position of authority or anything like that, I couldn't imagine walking back into that environment and just not immediately like falling right back into that, that memory and that routine of what you've been doing for the past 40 years. How does this not just trigger your entire mentality into work mode to where you're criticizing and yelling or doing whatever you normally do when you're on headset? Was he really there just enjoying the show, laughing and enjoying everything he was watching? I mean, I guess apparently that's what he was doing, but the whole thing was fishy. It was weird, and it scared us shitless because that could be the first step. Even though I say, hey, take a step back and think about this before you immediately fly off the rails and say, oh, Vince is back. I'm not saying that that's not going to be the truth. I'm just saying don't get there so quick. Maybe just see first if that's really what they're going to do. Who cares about being right or wrong or the first to know? Who fucking cares? That's stupid and self-centered. So just let's look at it and hope that he is telling the truth and he was just there to hang out. Maybe Vince missed it. Maybe Vince wanted to come back and say hello to a few people. It could just be that. But knowing Vince as we know him to be, he doesn't seem like the guy who can just step away from all of that responsibility and then just come back and say hi and just have some casual hangout with, the people that used to take orders from him. It just seems, fishy. It seems odd. And I'm not sure how much I buy it. And I do believe that there's a possibility that him being there could have been to test the reaction. But even if he's back, we still don't know what's going on with WWE and the sale. We're going to talk about WWE's betting here in a minute and what they're trying to do in terms of talking to gambling regulators and things like that. But it was mentioned in that same article that WWE is going to start having meetings in terms of a potential sale next month. So next month in April is when they're going to start meeting with potential buyers, whoever these buyers are. They might be imaginary at this point, but whoever is in the pool of potential new owners for WWE, they're going to start entertaining these interviews starting next month, which could really start putting things into motion. So let's say, for argument's sake, WWE does sell next month to somebody. What's the point of Vince even trying to come back and install himself some way just for the company to be sold, unless they feel like it's going to be sold to somebody who's going to let him or put him back in charge of creative. So he's at least planting the seed of having his presence back now. That way, in a month from now, when the new owners are, made public and Vince is back in control or something like that, maybe that's what all that is for. But I just doubt it. I still just don't think, in the world of business, because I think wrestling fans have to separate real life from wrestling sometimes. And a lot of times they feel that Vince McMahon is so stuck in his own ways and he has so much control of his company. Yes, he does, but he doesn't have control over the world. And I don't know how many real buyers and candidates to buy WWE, how many of those candidates are out there that actually want Vince to still be connected with this company? Because apparently, from what we heard earlier, that's a big sticking point to the Amazons and the Disneys and the Comcasts and things like that. If a platform like that buys WWE, it's almost assumed that Vince can't be a part of that, because I mean, hell, Amazon and those platforms have let go of CEOs for less than what Vince did. So it just doesn't make any sense for him to be involved if it sells to one of them. So, is he really gone for good, or is this the beginning of Vince possibly having a role again backstage in WWE? What I hate the most about this is we really don't know. It really could mean anything. It could go either way. Vince McMahon might permanently be gone from our lives from a creative standpoint. I believe that is very, very likely possibility, whether he shows up on Raw with a mustache to visit John Cena or not. I still believe that's a possibility. I also believe that this is all just a plan. Vince McMahon is worming his way back in, or slowly dipping his toes back in that water to get people used to seeing his weird ass and to get the shock of him being back kind of over and to lessen the impact of when he retakes control. I also think that's a possibility. The uncertainty is what I don't like, especially in a time in wrestling that is so fun, usually, and is so exciting. WrestleMania time, WWE is still managing to put together a pretty decent-looking WrestleMania card, regardless of who Brock Lesnar is facing. The card still does look pretty good for both nights, and there's a lot of things they can do, and no match at this point, in terms of the big ones, is a real sure thing. Roman has been on top for so long. It feels like, Cody's on the trajectory and path to win the title, but I think that's not a given at all. And I still think there's a very good chance that Roman could remain champion after WrestleMania. So they have a lot of good things set up at WrestleMania where I think we can be surprised, and that nothing is really a sure thing when it comes to a lot of those matches, especially the big ones. So even though things are great right now, I feel like they could be better if we didn't have all of this shit hanging over our heads. So hopefully after WrestleMania, it is kind of scary that we're going to have the King and Queen of the Ring in Saudi Arabia about 1 month after WrestleMania, a little bit less than 2 months, I guess. After WrestleMania, King and Queen of the Ring is going to be there. Interesting timing if they were to sell to the Saudis. That would probably be around the timetable when it would happen. It would be a couple of months after WrestleMania. If all of these meetings supposedly are taking place in April, you would think that, maybe a month or two after that, is when we get some sort of a sale, and it might tie in pretty nicely with the King and Queen of the Ring that's going to be on Labor Day weekend, same weekend as Double or Nothing. So it's just a mess. It's scary, and I don't know what the hell the future holds. Now, I mentioned the meetings that WWE is going to start holding for potential buyers next month. That was mentioned in a CNBC report that was talking about WWE being in talks with state gambling regulators to legalize betting on high-profile matches. And that kind of takes us into our next subject here, because betting on wrestling, betting in WWE wrestling, is absolutely ludicrous. Yes, I know betting in wrestling exists all over the world. You can do this shit offshore. You can do this stuff at home with your friends. You can bet on matches and all that stuff. But in terms of regulating it, with states and stuff like that in the U.S., and the potential problems that could really open up, just is insane to me. And this was, like I said, this was a report by CNBC, who kind of also in the article kind of laid out some of WWE's proposals on how to handle this and how to handle keeping results quiet. And nothing that they have said here makes any sense. Because now, for one thing, if they were able to find a way to make this happen, WWE, there's no way this could be a full card type of thing where every match can be bet on. I think this needs to be saved for main events of WrestleManias or SummerSlams or something major, high-profile matches. But even with doing it on a limited basis like that, it just opens up the door for major corruption. I don't know how you're going to be able, one of the things that was proposed, they said that WWE execs have proposed match results being locked up months ahead of time. You can't do that. You can't lock a match up months ahead of time. Granted, Vince isn't there anymore to tear up scripts and change direction at the drop of a hat. But still, it's hard to plan that far in ahead because things can happen. Things can change. Dynamics can change. Wrestlers can get hurt. all of that stuff. So if you close the book on these matches months out, how are you? I just don't know how you're not going to be prone to corruption, or if somebody in the mafia approaches, a referee, hey, do you know who the fuck's winning this? We'll give you $1 million if you tell us, or, some shit like that. I just think it's going to do major damage and adversely affect the creative process 100%, because you're not going to be able to know what you're doing. The wrestlers aren't going to know who's going to be winning until like the day of. And sometimes that's the way it goes anyway. Lots of guys have won. When they've won the championship, they found out that day. It's not that uncommon. But for that to now be commonplace, I just think that if you are going to try to legalize betting and convince state regulators to do this, it is going to cause and wreak havoc on your creative process, on a creative process that is still trying to get back on its feet from years of the shitstorm tornado that was Vince McMahon every day. And finally starting to get things, starting to get the stories to matter a little bit more, and to have a little bit more follow through and just a little bit of more consistency and continuity, and, and more of a stress-free vibe when it comes to the creative stuff. Adding this in, all for WWE to obviously explore another avenue of revenue. They stand to make a lot of money if this goes through, and the things that they can do. I just think that there are way too many problems that wouldn't make it worth it. Like, whatever kind of money you're going to bring in off of this, is it worth the problems that it could potentially spark? You could have you're going to be, employees are going to get in trouble for betting and cheating and doing collusion and corruption stuff. I just see this going all different kinds of bad ways. And I just wish it was something that they were not exploring. I think this is a terrible idea. I think there's no way that the fans are going to benefit from something like this getting approved. If WWE is able to get this legalized and push it through to a couple of states, I think that in no way will that be beneficial to the creative process, the wrestlers involved in these matches, or the fans at all. This does not help their product at all. All it does is put more cash in their pocket. And that's why I fucking hate companies so bad, because of shit like this. Waste of time, stupid. You guys are crazy for even attempting this. But the fact that they're doing it means that they're serious, and they're probably going to get their way, and they're going to get this pushed through somehow, which is going to make things really weird, really odd, and really difficult in the future. And this is why WWE is fucking dumb sometimes. But we'll keep our eye on that, and we'll see what winds up becoming of that, if anything. And it was in this very same report where they mentioned, kind of like at the end of it, that WWE is starting sale meetings next month. So that's where that story came from, was in the same report about the sports betting, or the wrestling betting. So, man, things are changing. I mean, in a year's time, you might be able to bet on the main event of WrestleMania, and you're going to have the Saudis owning the company, and Vince McMahon is going to be a referee with a mustache. Who knows? Who knows? Vince McMahon might start a podcast. Imagine that. Pandemonium, or some other Vince word, and start a podcast and on YouTube with his mustache and some weird co-host. Oh my God, could you imagine? Wrestling is in a weird place right now, and that whole betting story, I don't like. I don't gamble anyway. I don't even understand. I'm 45 years old, and I don't understand sports betting. I don't know what the numbers mean. I've never gambled. I invest, but I don't gamble. And none of that shit is gibberish to me. I don't understand what the numbers mean, what the minuses and the plus mean. I have no idea. I'm stupid when it comes to that. I literally know nothing when it comes to sports betting, which is another reason why I don't give a shit about it. So, weird. We'll keep our eye on it, though. Who knows? Lots of AEW news as well. Kind of some stuff about, well, actually, let's backtrack here. Let's backtrack. We got too jumbled up here. Talked about Vince McMahon at Raw and WWE. We want to stick with the subject of WWE, stay on topic here, and talk about the Hall of Fame. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Hall of Fame later on when we talk about SmackDown, but yesterday it was announced that Rey Mysterio, or last night on SmackDown, I should say, Rey Mysterio is going to be the first inductee to the 2023 Hall of Fame. That's interesting that he's the first guy. I'm curious now, if Rey's the headliner, are we not getting Batista? Because I thought we would get Batista. I feel like someone like Rey should be the headliner, but I also feel like this might be the first Hall of Fame in history where we've had a real live angle take place on it. I mean, the Hall of Fame is usually a shoot in most cases. And even though you might have some, verbal shots taken and some fun being had here and there, for the most part, the Hall of Fame is, hasn't had any brawls or anything like that. Now with Rey going in, you can almost guarantee that Dominic is going to attack Rey during the induction. Now, I have a million things to say about this. Number one, Meltzer is reporting that Conan is going to be the guy to induct Rey Mysterio. Conan is the right choice, but that's a surprising choice. He's probably going to start off his induction speech or his induction to Rey by asking everybody if they listen to his podcast, like he's asked me and so many others. Conan is cool. His little sidekick, Disco Inferno, is a douchebag. But for the most part, I don't really have any issue with Conan. And Conan is the perfect guy and really the only guy to induct Rey when you really think about it. And that's going to be interesting and cool, and Conan kind of being there if they do some sort of an angle with Dominic, because Dominic's kind of dressing like Conan. He's kind of got a little bit of Eddie, a little bit of Conan, and a little bit of his dad in him. And that's what makes Dominic so great as this heel character right now. So if he does some of this stuff in front of Conan, that will be interesting. I'm not that big of a fan of the idea of an angle like this happening at the Hall of Fame, but I also think that the Hall of Fame is dead to me kind of thing. I'm going to be in LA that night, and I'm not even going. It was always like one of my dreams. Oh, if I ever go to WrestleMania, I'm going to go to the Hall of Fame, do the whole weekend. But what the Hall of Fame has now become is so shitty to me. I really, really dislike the Hall of Fame now. And it was, I think, of the post Attitude Era, the post WWF era, from 2002 on, or I guess 2004 on, when they resurrected the Hall of Fame at WrestleMania 20, that year that Bobby Heenan and everybody went in, which I still think is one of my favorite years. I think the Hall of Fame in general is my favorite thing about the new era that WWE has ever done. It's been the best part of this new generation of wrestling that is a far cry from when I was, when I was the biggest fan, the 80s and then the 90s and the Attitude Era, all that great stuff I lived through. Once WWF changed to WWE, it just felt like the business in general had changed and things just got stale and a lot more boring. Granted, WWE still had their moments, had great pay-per-views, great WrestleManias, and great champions throughout that time. But in terms of how it felt to me as a fan, was way different. I had lost about 50% of my enthusiasm during that transition. But my favorite part of all of it was the Hall of Fame. It was so awesome. I loved the 4 and 5 hour long Hall of Fames. I loved the 30-minute speeches. I love Vince McMahon tiptoeing out to the stage to pull Bob Backlund away from the microphone. I love that shit. I grew up with these guys, seeing them go into the Hall of Fame, tell their stories, have some laughs. Sometimes it's great and perfect. Sometimes it's awkward and weird. That's what made the Hall of Fame special. And it was my favorite night of the year. I loved it. But then in 2019, things changed. And I remember I was so excited. Me and Elizabeth had just started dating, and she was going to come over and watch the Hall of Fame with me. And I was excited to show her the Hall of Fame and how great it was going to be. And then I see this setup, and it's got the ring, and the ropes are missing, and the podium's in the ring. And I'm like, oh God, I hate this. And then they start combining. Then we had the pandemic, of course. And then we had the Thunderdome Hall of Fame, which is the worst thing I've ever fucking seen. And then now they're kind of pairing up the Hall of Fame with SmackDown, and they're really condensing it now, shortening up these speeches. I get the talent can't sit around there forever because they got a big show the next day, but that never stopped them before. And I think that's just one night of the year where you need to prepare yourself to stay up late and be fucking tired. And you have to go in and work the show of your life the next day. It's just the way it's always been done. And now they're starting to change it. They're starting to condense it, water it down to where the Hall of Fame is not what it felt like before. And I'm depressed. It bums me out. I'm so sad that they have killed and murdered the Hall of Fame. So with that being said, since the Hall of Fame is what it is now, it's a condensed hour-long version, probably going to, air on USA, and then maybe there might be a longer version, available online or something like that. It's not as great as it used to be, I don't think, anyway, and I don't think they have any plans to bring it back to that old way. It's probably going to have that same crappy setup as last year. And with Mysterio going in, since we now kind of have this different looking Hall of Fame, I'm actually okay with an angle like this taking place because it doesn't it doesn't, I guess, I don't want to say jeopardize, but it doesn't really go against what the Hall of Fame has become, because the Hall of Fame is different than what it used to be anyway. So now, since the Hall of Fame is different, we did have that fan try to attack Bret Hart that year. That should have been an omen that this new setup was ass. So if you're going to do something with Rey and Dominic, sure, the Hall of Fame is different now. The Hall of Fame is a joke now. Might as well have an angle play out on the Hall of Fame. And another idea I have possibly about this is that Rey still has not put his hands on Dominic. Rey has still not taken his boy to the woodshed. Rey has still not beat the absolute shit out of his son like we've been waiting for him to do. Dominic's been asking for it. Rey has been showing incredible restraint, respect. There is nothing that is going to make this man put his hands on his own son. And so we've been speculating in... That is true, The Undertaker's was great. I will say I loved The Undertaker's speech. I shouldn't shit on the Hall of Fame that hard, but I still am very bummed out about how it looks now compared to how it used to look. Undertaker's, however, was very good. I'll give you that. So we've been talking about Rey and Dominic lately. Okay, when is Rey going to snap? When is Rey finally going to be fed up with this kid and get physical with him and fight him, or get on the mic and agree to the WrestleMania match? And I even speculated that it's possible that Rey does not even touch his son until WrestleMania. It might just be Rey finally reluctantly agreeing to the match on SmackDown. Okay, you want your match, you got it. I'll see you at WrestleMania. And Rey never throws a punch on his son until the day of the show. But what if Rey continues to hold out? And that's what I think they might do here. So I think Rey, we saw on SmackDown last night, Dominic got in his face again, talked shit on the mic. I think he said he should have been Eddie's son, which was great, and continued to berate his father, but still Rey is showing restraint. What if Rey is somehow able to show 3 more weeks of restraint, and that little shit is in his face every week, and Rey still does not lay his hands on him? And then we go to the Hall of Fame, still with the match not made for WrestleMania. And then at the Hall of Fame, Dominic attacks Rey at the Hall of Fame, takes him out, and everybody's shocked, and then security comes out and gets Dominic away, and Rey kind of stumbles to his feet, and he kind of goes over to the podium, and he's kind of using the podium to keep him standing up. And he goes, I didn't want to do this. I have no choice. Look at what my son has done to me, my knight. He attacked me when I went into the Hall of Fame. My wife and my daughter is here. My family, my friends. It's in LA. Rey lives here in San Diego. This is in Rey's neighborhood. He's got his friends there, and that's where he finally agrees to it. He agrees to the match at the Hall of Fame. And tomorrow I'm going to whip your ass, boy. And maybe it's a night one thing. It could be night one, Rey and Dom. And that's what I would do. Since the match isn't official yet for Rey and Dominic, you might as well save it for the Hall of Fame, have Dominic attack Rey, and then Rey agrees to the match right there in front of everybody at the Hall of Fame. That would be cool, I think. And like I said, Conan being a part of that will just be interesting to see his presence there as Dominic, a guy that a kid that he knew as a little kid as well, putting a whooping on his dad like that. Who knows if Rhea Ripley's going to be out there? I mean, hell, maybe Edge jumps up on the stage or something and tries to back him off. Rey might have some help. There is going to be people in the crowd who might be Rey's friends. It depends on which wrestlers they decide to sit there. But if Edge is there, you'd imagine he's going to get up in that business because he's got Balor at WrestleMania. So the whole thing could be a big ass crazy fight. We'll have to see. But it's interesting. And I guess I didn't even say it, and I should have started with it. Congratulations to Rey Mysterio. If there's ever a wrestler who's worthy of going into the Hall of Fame while they are still an active star, it's Rey Mysterio. The dude is up there with the most influential people in wrestling history. I'd put him in my top 3 most influential ever. I think Rey Mysterio is the reason why wrestling is for everyone now. I mean, the first time I ever saw Rey Mysterio, I saw pictures of him in a magazine when he was 16. And I was like, what do you mean he's a wrestler? He looks like a child. My brain couldn't comprehend that a little person this tiny is in the ring fighting wrestlers, because in my mind, wrestlers were big and strong and giant. And there's no way an 85-year-old 11-year-old, or I'm sorry, an 85-pound 11-year-old is going to be able to hang with these guys, because that's what Rey looked like to me. He looked like a tiny, tiny, tiny child. And then when he got to WCW and the American audience got to see him a little bit more, and you could see the things he was doing, the things he was capable of doing, the innovation, the mind-blowing athleticism. Now, you know, Ricochet and Wesley and Carmelo Hayes and guys like that are blowing our minds every day. Okay. But back then, he was defying the laws of physics. He was defying the laws of gravity. He was doing things that the human body shouldn't be able to do. And it was just incredible. And it was able to influence, inspire a lot of wrestlers who might not have the size to be a traditional 80s wrestler to maybe go in another direction. And it helped guide and take a lot of the luchadors and the Mexican guys did this to help take take wrestling in general into that more athletic line of work, to where you now have old fat farts like Jim Cornette, who can't stand, you know, that guys are athletic now, because he preferred when guys were hairy with a beer belly and pranced around the ring with a mullet. That's real wrestling to them. But now wrestling is for everyone. You can have athletic, you can have big, powerful, big, meaty men slapping meat, and you can have a couple of high flyers dazzling you to death. Wrestling has something for everybody. All the different weight classes, all the different styles, all of the different divisions. We have all of that because of Rey Mysterio. So think about that next time you're one of those smug jerk-offs that wants to criticize a specific style because you don't think it's legitimate. The guy going in the Hall of Fame and the people putting him in there say otherwise, because Rey is responsible for a lot of that and is one of the reasons that stuff exists. So if you're shitting on that, you're shitting on Rey, in my opinion. And Rey is very, very deserved. And Rey's always been one of my favorites of all time. I really, really appreciate what he brought to the business. And I'm thrilled for him to go into the Hall of Fame. I'm just a little bit worried that his Hall of Fame induction is probably being done more to extend or, I guess, just extend his feud with his son and be used as a reason to get that match on the WrestleMania card, which could be good, but not sure how it's going to feel for, you know, the Hall of Fame vibe of things. And by the way, speaking of the Hall of Fame, EW Insider is reporting that the Great Muta will also be going into the WWE Hall of Fame this year as well. Now, he has not been announced, but that's what they are reporting, and they're claiming it's confirmed. Now, it's really hard to be skeptical about that, be questionable about that, because Shinsuke Nakamura went over to work that match with Muta. So I think Triple H allowing that to happen, there was probably a discussion, hey, how about you come back over here and we'll put you in the Hall of Fame. We kind of thought we might see Muta in the Royal Rumble. Hall of Fame is better. Again, it's weird when somebody who had very little to do with WWE going into the Hall of Fame, but we've already had a lot of people like that. You know, the Stan Hansens. Did they put Jushin Liger in? I can't remember. He's just had a match or two in WWE. You know, Vern Gagne. A lot of people who didn't have a ton to do with the company, but WWE still wants to honor their contributions to wrestling, whether they had stuff to do with WWE or not. And even prior to Triple H being there, that's something that even Vince was doing, which I appreciate. So Great Muta going in is deserved. And I'm happy that he's going to get the nod this year as well. And curious to see who else goes in. If we're going to get a tag team like a Demolition, if we're going to get a Midnight Express or something like that, would be great if we got a Cyndi Lauper. Would be great if we got Chyna. You know, I know Chyna kind of technically went in with DX, but she really should go in individually at this point because she's Chyna. I mean, we watched the Chyna A&E documentary last week, and just heart-wrenching to see, you know, her life and to relive that and how bad things went for her at times, especially at the end, and the shitty human beings that called themselves her friends is gross to watch. And I really want her memory to, you know, be more positive. And I think, you know, that's been the goal in recent years, is to focus on the good that Chyna did. You know, and yeah, she had a lot of personal problems, made a lot of mistakes, did a lot of embarrassing things, but she also had a lot in her life that, you know, she didn't ask for and she didn't deserve, and she had a rough time with it. And I think she could have just used better people in her life. And putting her in the Hall of Fame now, using the porn thing as an excuse, is ridiculous. I mean, this company regularly puts X-Pac on TV. His cock was in that video with Chyna too, don't forget. So it's not just Chyna. And I think that it's time. And I'm hoping that she is another inductee this year to the Hall of Fame. And if we get Batista, you would think that he might be the headliner, because the Rey and Dominic stuff, it might be hard to headline Rey and Dominic. Well, maybe then, maybe not, actually. I was going to say it might be hard to headline Rey if you're going to do the Dominic stuff, but that might be the best headliner. I mean, the best thing to do might be for Rey to do what I described earlier, for him to get his ass kicked and then get up and pull himself up on the podium and then announce that he's going to face Dominic at WrestleMania right there at the Hall of Fame. Have the Hall of Fame go off the air with Rey saying that. Dominic, I will see you tomorrow at Hall of Fame and I'll give you the whooping or take you to whatever they call woodsheds in Mexico. So I hope that that's what we get at the Hall of Fame, and the Hall of Fame goes off the air with a seething mad Rey Mysterio ready to unleash fury on his own son. But we'll see. I think they have set themselves up to do something interesting here, but like I said in my little Hall of Fame rant there, the Hall of Fame is kind of dead to me right now. Anywho, what's next? I wanted to stay on the topic of WWE, which is why we backtracked a little bit there and talked about the Hall of Fame. Also, a couple of new WWE PLEs on the calendar. We have Backlash, Saturday, May 6th. Puerto Rico, the location, hosted by Bad Bunny. So Bad Bunny will be making his return to WWE at Backlash. I had no idea that was even booked for Puerto Rico until somebody brought it to my attention. Also, we have the King and Queen of the Ring, like I mentioned earlier, set for May 27th. That's going to be in Saudi Arabia. It's going to be right around the same time you would think that WWE could be selling the company, and they might be selling it to them, which is scary. That's also Double or Nothing weekend. Luckily, Double or Nothing is the next day, so WWE at least is not making the fans choose between which PLE or pay-per-view to buy. So it'll be a good weekend of wrestling because we will have King of the Ring on Saturday, King and Queen of the Ring on Saturday, and also we have Double or Nothing the next day on Sunday. So the King and Queen of the Ring, I kind of like because it makes me think that they're now not forced. They're still going to have some big match, I'm sure, scheduled for this card, but I don't feel like now that they're forced to put some crazy WrestleMania-sized match on this card, even though they might still do that. Backlash is May 6th. They're going to have to turn around 3 weeks later and do another show here. So having the King and Queen of the Ring is perfect because most of the pay-per-view can be taken up by these tournament matches. So I would assume you're going to get the final four of each tournament, right? There's no way you're going to have time for an 8-man tournament and an 8-woman tournament. There's no way. So the first round, I guess, will be on TV, and then you'll do the final four of the men. Or maybe to do the final four of the men and the final four of the women on the pay-per-view. That'll be 7 matches or something like that. And then you might have Cody defending the title or Roman defending the title on the side, but luckily they're not going to have to build like some sort of WrestleMania match card, and their story, you're not going to have to worry about where your storylines are either because you can just have the qualifying matches and it's just a tournament. So the stories don't matter as much because a lot of times I've always felt like these crown jewel shows are kind of in the way of what they're doing creatively and it throws them off. So putting the King and Queen of the Ring on these shows is brilliant. Excellent use of those ridiculous Saudi Arabia shows. So those shows are coming up in WWE. Now I want to transition into some AEW news, but before I do that, let me just cruise over here, see if there are any other super chats I need to answer. I know there's a couple of them. Let me just say hello and thank Al Ramos Pro for the $2 before we get into our next topic here. Good mic work. I'm getting married on May 4th. Time flies. Holy shit, May 4th? Bro, that's coming up in like 2 months. You're going to be a husband. May the 4th be with you, man. Congratulations. Also, shout out to our streaming friend, Conman, who got engaged today. Shout out to him. I saw that on Twitter a few minutes before we went live. So everybody's getting engaged up in here. I got engaged on Christmas. So look at that. We're all getting married in this world. Who else is next? Rodrigo Martinez. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate the $2. Could Taz be in the Hall of Fame this year or 2024? 2024 sounds way more likely than this year because next year is in Philadelphia. Taz going in Philly would make sense, but that depends on if AEW is cool with it. I'm sure they would be if WWE wanted to bring Taz in. That would be publicity for AEW. They'd be fools to say no to that. So Taz being brought into WWE, being honored as a Hall of Famer, and then returning to AEW for commentary, that would take some cooperation between AEW that I'm not sure is there. But I think if Taz approached Tony Khan, yo, Tony, they want to put me in the Hall of Fame, man. I mean, it would be an asshole if Tony didn't say yes to that, unless the relationship internally between the two companies is just too, isn't good right now or isn't good enough to allow that. I think TK would do it. But Taz really isn't on my radar. Taz sure is Hall of Fame worthy, But the fact that he works for the opposing company makes things a little different in that situation. So a lot of those ECW guys, like Gorilla fans, is saying Taz, Tommy Dreamer, Sabu, RVD, especially Paul E. I think RVD and Paul E for sure going into the Hall of Fame. They deserve it. I could see Shane Douglas going in as well and some other ECWs, but I was never a big fan of Sandman. Tommy Dreamer, I think Tommy Dreamer could go into the Hall of Fame as well because Dreamer has put so many years in, and he also has a lot to do behind the scenes. He's had a lot of various roles in various companies. I know he's worked for ECW, WWE, Impact, and various roles behind the scenes. And he's a smart guy. So he could go in, sure. But, Rob Van Dam's already in the Hall of Fame. Thank you, Nate Dogg. That's right. He is. He went in on didn't he go in the Thunderdome year? Yeah, see? That's why I forget about the pandemic. It didn't happen in my mind. Starting to forget inductees. But that sucks, man. That sucks that RVD had to go in that way instead of something way more fun, like passing out blunts to the audience or something. That's the way to go into the Hall of Fame, if you ask me. Anyway, let's move on to some AEW news. Chris Jericho was a guest on Renee Paquette's podcast, where he did talk a little bit about some of the locker room situations since All Out, since Scrumgate, Brawl Out. He mentioned how himself, Jon Moxley, and Bryan Danielson really stepped up as the locker room leaders, and we kind of heard as much. You knew that those are going to be the guys to come up and say, okay, we need to, wrangle everybody in here, keep morale high. Moxley, I think, even made a statement, but with his extension with AEW, signing on with them for many more years. And Jericho talked about a lot of his responsibilities outside of the ring in AEW. When he re-signed with them as well, his responsibilities increased. And just hearing him talk about a lot of that stuff is really interesting because it's made me speculate in the past about Chris Jericho and his relationship with AEW. And I've kind of called Chris Jericho the Triple H of AEW. I kind of feel like he could have that role alongside Tony Khan, where he's trusted. He's not Tony Khan's son-in-law, but he's a wrestler who's very experienced, who's a veteran, who understands wrestling pretty well, and could be one of the guys that transitions the best from a in-ring role to a behind-the-scenes role. There's been a lot of great transitions, but Triple H arguably, is the guy that's had the most success doing it. And I could almost see Chris Jericho being a Triple H counterpart in AEW, once he is finally out of the ring, and he doesn't make, and he's still obviously going to tour with Fozzy and all that stuff. But if Tony Khan is always going to be wearing every creative hat, at some point, it feels like he needs to have somebody closer to him that he can trust or he can work with or can handle certain aspects of stuff. Maybe Chris Jericho slowly starts assuming that role of more responsibilities behind the scenes and maybe even creative one day. And I don't think that would be all that bad for AEW. I think that's something that Chris Jericho should try to pursue and stick with them as long as possible. And I think he's already halfway there with all of the current duties and responsibilities he has. Now, that really makes you wonder, how is Jericho going to handle a potential return to the company by CM Punk? Because we heard the stories, Jericho never admitted this himself, but we've heard the stories of Jericho telling CM Punk he's a cancer and telling other locker room talent that he would make sure that Punk was never back in the company. So you could either chalk that up to just being in the heat of the moment. There was a lot of emotion and intensity and anger floating around that night, and that catastrophic fight and that implosion that took place after All Out, a lot of guys were probably pissed off, and Jericho probably saw what that did, and he might have approached Punk and told him that. Maybe things have changed now. At the end of the day, Chris Jericho's not dumb, and he knows what kind of money you can make off a potential situation like this as well, and it just depends on where everybody's at. So we always heard that Jericho was adamant that he would see to it that Punk didn't come back, but what if Tony Khan wants to bring him back? How does Jericho handle that? How does he feel about that? How are they going to work together? Are they going to work together? You would have to think there would have to be a conversation where they both get in a room and just hash out whatever, issues that was. There's going to have to be a lot of hashing out with everybody if Punk is going to come back, but they have been dropping a ton of hints about CM Punk, with MJF eating the pickles at the scrum after Revolution. And all of the little hints they've been dropping, FTR's new shirt, FTR re-signing with the company, it feels like some of the stars are aligning where Punk actually could come back once he's healed up from his injury, which should be pretty soon. Now, there's also talk about the Elite. The Elite, Kenny and the Bucks, all their contracts are up this year, and there have been some reports, according to Meltzer, that Tony Khan is trying to re-sign them well ahead of when these contracts expire. So Meltzer was kind of speculating about how WWE would affect the careers of Kenny and the Bucks, if it might be better for one of them than the other to go. The young Bucks have got families where Kenny does not. Kenny going there as a single star would open up an endless stream of opponents, of new opponents for him, and he could have a great run there. Where the Elite, with the Bucks, maybe not. They'd have to work, the live events, a larger schedule, at least with AEW. They're making money and working a schedule that will allow them to continue their style long after they probably should be able to work a style like that. And that's very attractive to them. But maybe Kenny could find WWE more attractive. At the end of the day, it sounds like Tony Khan, it's in his best interest to keep all of these guys around as well. And I got to say, AEW should consider it a big win if they're able to not only resign the Elite to long-term deals, but also bring CM Punk back. That will be very telling. That will show you that everybody is willing to kiss and make up and perhaps make some money off of this. And you always wonder about the CM Punk stuff. The more time goes by, the more hints that they drop. He's being brought up on TV a little bit. They're still not talking about All Out in that situation. Tony Khan never will, but they're not pretending that CM Punk doesn't exist. And if they are able to get all these guys back, they should consider that a big win, and it should be a good feather in the cap of Tony Khan that he was actually able to get these guys together and get them back on the same page and make sure that any of these things that happened before don't happen again. And to get apologies to happen, because I'm telling you right now, regardless of where you stand on the situation, where Tony Khan stands, Jericho stands, Punk stands, or the Elite stands, CM Punk cannot come back to that company unless an apology comes out of his mouth. Now, an apology is going to have to come out of everybody's mouth. Kenny and the Bucks and everybody involved in the fight and who did immature shit are going to have to say they're sorry, obviously. So when I say Punk needs to say he's sorry, don't think that means the Elite doesn't. Of course it does. But Punk has to say he's sorry. Punk has to say, I apologize for what I said at the media scrum. He can't come back into the company. Tony Khan cannot bring him back into the company if he still has those bitter feelings, to where everything that he felt that day at the scrum is still the way he feels now. You can't bring him back. That has to be resolved. These guys have to get together and resolve it. It has to be done. You bring them back, you're going to be torching your own company. Now, if you do get these guys in a room, they hash everything out, and they are back on the same page, now you're going to be printing money. Because it might be at this point the only thing that's really going to save AEW. I don't want to say save AEW, they're not in trouble, but in terms of giving them that big boost, look at the success WWE's had with the Bloodline and that storyline and how great it's been. You do this right, and you could have something equally as compelling here with CM Punk coming back and doing battle with the Elite. I've maintained up front that after what Punk did, I don't see how he could ever come back. He was the one that had to go. I still feel that way. But if everybody is willing to put the past behind them, then who am I to say it's wrong? Because wrestlers have made up from a lot more. We've seen a lot of guys work together after physicality. We've seen a lot of backstage fights, and these guys then work together in matches. The most famous backstage fight of all time, Bret Hart and Vince McMahon, culminated with a WrestleMania match, albeit a stupid one 14 years later. But still, business can be done, money can be made, and it would be a great way to not only help themselves, put themselves in one of the most memorable angles, not only in AEW's history, maybe even of all time, and would be a great boost to the company that really needs it. So it's kind of, when you look at it like that, it's win-win all the way around for this not to happen. For Kenny, the Bucks, Hangman Page, CM Punk, and Tony Khan never being able to come to an agreement to get Punk back in the company and to work together and do business would be a shame. It would be a real, real shame. And that's why you think about the parties here. Everybody involved in this thing is a wrestling veteran with a sharp brain in their heads. So you have to really despise someone. You have to really hate someone I'm just trying to think of like the people or the person I hate the most in the world. I could coexist with him for a $5 million payday. Sure. No problem. I'm pretty sure he could do that with me too. So, when you look at it in simple terms, and Greg usually does see life in very basic terms sometimes, then from that aspect, I don't see how he doesn't come back and how you don't capitalize on this. And taking all of this time, that injury was probably a blessing in disguise. It allowed Punk to go away, allowed things to cool off, and allowed them to slowly work their way back into each other. Think about how Stone Cold Steve Austin left the company in 2002. It took about 9 months. He took off the rest of the year. He was angry. And then finally it was Jim Ross who reached out. Hey, how about if I stick you two guys in the room? Do you think you could work things out? And they worked things out. So Brett and Vince were able to do it. Brett and Sean were able to do it. Austin and Vince were able to do it. Vince and Hogan were able to do it. Every other backstage fight, Eddie and Kurt Angle, Batista and Booker T, all these guys who fought each other, and came back to do business. What really is different about that than this situation? To me, nothing except for that media scrum. That was so gnarly. I don't think I can ever get over how Punk just went in on those guys like that. And for the fans, like I've said a million times, for the fans, like, they started it. What are you, 4? Who cares who fucking started it? It doesn't even what they did, what Punk is even accusing them of, even if Punk is right, which he probably is, even if everything Punk said, if it wasn't a misunderstanding, which I believe everything at the end of the day probably was a misunderstanding with these guys. But if Punk really, truly believes in his heart that they were purposely trying to negatively affect his push, his run, and the company's success, even if he's right about that, which he's not, I don't think it's as bad as and unprofessional as what he did publicly. Because even if he's right about all that shit, at least that stuff's done behind the scenes, and that's politicking BS that you've always seen in wrestling. To come out, and act like a goddamn teenager hopped up on caffeine, who's mad at the world in a media scrum when you've been a 20-plus year wrestling veteran, how do you behave that way? That's a very immature way to handle things, and Punk, I've always thought, was way, 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 way smarter than that. So to me, that was so bad, so unacceptable, and so unprofessional that there was no coming back from it. But time heals all wounds. And the wrestling fan in me, you think I want these guys to stay away from each other? Hell no. Bring CM Punk back. It's not my company. Yes, I would have concerns bringing some CM Punk back. The morale issues you could have, how some talent who does seem to be pro CM Punk and some talent tends to be anti-Punk, you could cause a rift in your locker room, but it ain't my locker room. All I'm going to see is what I see on TV, and that's going to be interesting as shit. So if AEW brings Punk back, I believe and I trust that they are going to try to make it as right as possible for the locker room. We saw Hulk Hogan come back into the company and have to make a big speech to all the wrestlers and shit like that. It might be a situation like that where Punk is going to have to address the locker room. And he's going to have to address his behavior. And maybe Punk is willing to do that. Punk might have even been texting Tony and the Bucks and Kenny and everybody, hey, I will get up in front of the whole locker room and say, I'm sorry for what I did, as long as you guys say you're sorry too, or whatever they need to do. Whatever agreement needs to happen, I think it needs to happen, because how great would it be if right after what is looking like it's going to be a pretty awesome WrestleMania season and WrestleMania show, if right after that happens, and then we go into our WrestleMania lull that tends to happen every year, and WWE just kind of falls off the shelf a little bit, just in terms of, excitement and ratings and stuff, it just happens every year. It's just the way it goes. So if they experience any sort of little down period after WrestleMania, and then AEW picks things up with an Elite and CM Punk feud, we could be right into the summer here with some great wrestling, because we're going to have AEW picking up the slack from WWE. And then just a couple months later, WWE is going to have their act back together, because now SummerSlam's coming up. So we could be treated with a great summer of wrestling here if all parties are able to come to an agreement. And I hope that they are. So Punk, Matt, Nick, Kenny, Tony, figure it out. Figure it out for us, because it would be sweet. Some other AEW news that I'm not really familiar with, but apparently GCW is opposing AEW's Fight Forever video game. I guess is Fight Forever some name that they've already trademarked or owned or something? I have no idea. There apparently are some settlement talks underway. Some fans have been concerned that this is going to delay the release of the game, but I don't think they've even had a release date for the game yet anyway. But Brett Lauderdale has gone on record on Twitter saying today that they never have and never will ask for $1 of Tony Khan's money. So not sure what's going on there. Greg doesn't play video games. Greg doesn't give a shit if this video ever comes out. I don't. Doesn't really affect me over here on Greg Island. But for the rest of you who play video games, I hope this is not too much of an inconvenience for you. And I hope the GCW stuff doesn't postpone anything in terms of the release of the game, because that would suck. But that's what happens in business, man. That's why all these trademarking things happen, and it just sucks. Shout out to the Street Profits. Anyway, that kind of does it for all of the wrestling news I had written down. I do want to talk a little bit about this past week's Raw, this past week's Dynamite, and a little bit about last night's SmackDown, although we're not going to get into everything about these shows, just the key points here. But before I do that, let me just go over here and say hi to Mike, who's chiming in. What's going on? Good to see you. Andrew Parker, we allowed to put Luke Harper / Brody Lee in the Hall of Fame? I think they're allowed for sure. It would have to be, I guess, approved or agreed upon by Amanda, his wife. I feel like Harper going to the Hall of Fame would be nice. It would be great for his family, but it's not like they treated Harper very well there. Yes, he was a former Intercontinental Champion, part of one of the greatest factions in history. In terms of the criteria required for going into the Hall of Fame, I believe Luke Harper has it. But Luke Harper also spent a lot of years frustrated in the company, and I think and mistreated in the company, and his talent not realized type of thing, and his potential anyway, or what he can do. And then finally, when he went to AEW, and he was the exalted one, and he had his run, he looked like he was on path to be a pretty big single star there until tragedy struck. Had he stuck around, not died, I don't know where he would be today. If he would even, have continued his success in AEW, or maybe he would have found his way back to WWE. I don't know. I feel like, though, if they put Luke Harper in, a lot of fans, because you got the tribals, so the AEW crazies, or whatever they're called these days, are going to think that WWE is just wanting to take their guy or make money off him or something like that. I feel like it would just be too much. Fans wouldn't allow it to be nice. It would be controversial or something like that, when it really shouldn't be. And I would hate to see that type of bullshit clouding and overshadowing what should be a very lovely night for Brody Lee. So unfortunately, I just don't think a lot of fans can handle it at all. I give a lot of flack to the people that just shit on AEW for no reason, who are just Jim Cornette robots, huff his bullshit and go around and just repeat everything verbatim because they're uninventive chodes. But it's not like you don't get any of that on the other side either. And I could see if WWE attempted to put Brody Lee in, you'd have people thinking that WWE's trying to steal something from AEW. You know how people are. It's just going to be too much of that. And I feel like it's not what Brody or his family deserves, to have an induction overshadowed by nonsense from idiotic fans. You know what I mean? So I kind of vote no on Brody Lee just for those reasons. But in terms of it being worthy, of course he is. He's Brody Lee, man. Disco Inferno in the Hall of Fame. I would rather eat a blue cheese camel vagina sandwich than put Disco Inferno in the Hall of Fame. No, he's not going in the Hall of Fame. He is, no. That's all I can say there. That's all I have to say about that. Anyway, let's move on to this past week's Monday Night Raw, because it was interesting. Like I said, we talked all about Vince McMahon at the beginning of the podcast here, and his presence there all night long at Gorilla. But we also had the return of John Cena. Now, John Cena was going to be on Raw on Monday. We figured to start his program with Austin Theory, which he did. It was very predictable, but maybe what wasn't as predictable is how good the promo was. John Cena absolutely demolished Austin Theory on the mic. Cena comes out. He's cutting his promo. He's, of course, interrupted by Theory. He's coming out strutting his shit, and he wants a match with John Cena, and Cena tells him no, and then proceeds to tell him why. Because you're a fucking piece of shit who nobody cares about. You suck. You're weak. You're pathetic. Just shit all over the face of Theory. And I loved that this is great for Theory because this is, it's almost like his initiation. He's in there with one of the best. He's in there with the guy that many people are going to compare him to for the rest of his life or for the rest of his wrestling career. And so this is a natural match to do. And it's, and I put on Twitter, I said, this is the promo equivalent of CM Punk versus Eddie Guerrero in 2002, I think. And Punk tells this story all the time. Eddie Guerrero, when he got fired from WWE, he went and worked some indie spots, and he worked a match with CM Punk. Now, CM Punk had already started to gain and to grow his name, and people kind of knew who he was, and he was starting to get some traction, and it started to feel like he had a bright future. And then he tells the story himself. He goes, here, I think I'm starting to know what I'm doing, and I'm good. And then I get in the ring with Eddie Guerrero, and I see how far from ready for the big time I really am. And I felt like this promo was a lot of that. It was partly reminding the young fella that you ain't ready for this, but at the same time, it's going to be a learning experience that's going to make him ready for this in the future. And they accomplished both of those things. The fans loved it, of course, because Theory's easy to hate, and John Cena putting him in his place makes me laugh as an old man sitting here thinking about, by the way, the Rivals doc this week was John Cena and The Rock. It makes me laugh sitting here thinking about 11 years ago, John Cena was the worst promo cutter of all time, Mr. Fruity Pebbles guy, can't talk on the mic. The Rock came back and was shitting on Cena. You can't see me. And the fans were spooging themselves. I mean, it was just such orgasmic joy for all of them to see Cena being put down by The Rock. And I was calling their bullshit out. I'm like, don't pretend like Cena can't cut a promo. He hung with The Rock on every one of those exchanges. There was a few promos that I thought The Rock won. There was a couple promos that I thought Cena won. And Cena had him with the promos on the wrist stuff and all of that. It was not one-sided at all, no matter how badly the fans wanted that to be the case. And I called them out for their bullshit on that. And it makes me laugh now that those very same fans that were literally whacking off at the sight of The Rock crapping on Cena are now doing the same thing, watching Cena shit on this guy. And it's just so nice to be vindicated. Like I told everybody that's what was happening all those years ago, and it's so funny and fun to see it play out in real time now. But John Cena putting this kid in his place was magical. It's just what Austin Theory needed, and the fans loved every minute of it. Now, I hope that in this match, I feel like, what do you guys think? Theory has to win, right? I mean, part of me thinks that it would be great to see John Cena win. John Cena hasn't really won a match in a while. He lost to Roman at SummerSlam. He did come back and work the SmackDown match. I think that he won, but when was the last big singles match that John Cena won? I actually don't even know. So I feel like maybe he could be due for one here, but I feel like there's more story to tell with Theory winning than Theory losing, unless, John Cena sticks around and he beats Theory, but then again, what would be different? And that's a question that I asked these same fans. Most fans, I think even the biggest John Cena haters back in the day are probably most likely given how they're known to think, are probably rooting for Cena in this situation, right? So if Cena wins, my question to those people is, why would that make you happy? Why would that make you happy that Cena beat Theory here, but when Cena beat Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 30, that pissed you off? Bray Wyatt and Theory are both up-and-coming new stars on the roster. Essentially, both would benefit a lot from beating John Cena at WrestleMania. So why is it okay for Cena to beat Theory, but it wasn't okay for Theory or for Cena to beat Bray? Maybe because you're a wrestling fan and you just like to cheer and boo for who you like. Who would have thought? You're not an analyst after all. You're actually just a fucking fan, just like us. Who would have thought? So Cena beating Theory, while that would be fun to watch him get that, I don't think this is a title match, is it? The title's not on the line. If it is, John Cena being U.S. champion again would be fun, but John Cena is not going to be sticking around to do his U.S. Open challenges. He's got movies to make. Plus, the match is probably not even for the title anyway, and if it's not, and you had John Cena win, I don't know what that would do for Theory, because you've already had him hit rock bottom. He did the Money in the Bank briefcase thing, and he looked like a chump, and he used that as a way to catapult himself into the big time, and now he's there. So if you do another situation where he loses to Cena, I'm sure he could take that and use that and turn it into motivation to succeed more. But I also think if he beats John Cena, it would go down as a big moment for him. Now, for whatever you think about Austin Theory, personally, I don't know anything about some of these allegations he may or may not have had. I don't know the story on those, so I can't comment on him. I'm just trying to look at him as a wrestler who WWE is invested in. And when you're looking at him like that, and you see the potential and all of the just the outline and framework that this guy has is exactly what WWE wants and is looking for. So I kind of feel like Theory has to win this match. And if he did, he would be just a magnificent douche the following night on Raw, especially if Cena probably not being there, back to go do his movies or whatever it is, and he just came in to put this kid over at WrestleMania, which again is something that I said about Cena years and years ago. I'm like, Cena will get to the point in his life where he's going to be putting over the next crop, and that's what he's doing. And he's done it with AJ, he's done it with Roman, he'll probably do it with Theory, he might do it with others. Before he's officially done or officially retired from wrestling. And I still think he's got one more championship run left in him, which is great, which means somebody gets to beat him for that championship. So that would be terrific if that happened in the future as well. So right now, where I stand is I think Austin Theory should win this match, but I'm not completely sold on it yet that he's gonna. It just depends on what else they're gonna do. Also, it looks like John Cena is kind of almost looked like he's passing that white meat babyface torch right over to Cody. He introduced Cody on Raw, brought him out. They had a nice little exchange, handshake and hug. And John Cena toured and visited Cody's Nightmare Factory this past week. Took a picture with all of his students. Very cool. So it feels like John Cena is almost like grooming Cody. Hey, you're going to be me. Because Roman was that guy, but now Roman's a heel, and Roman's probably going to remain a heel for quite some time. And they might need that Roman Reigns, that babyface Roman Reigns, or that John Cena to send out to Kimmel and to Fallon and whoever else to do the media appearances and stuff. And Cody likes to do that. He's very comfortable being on TV. He's very comfortable being interviewed and being in the public spotlight. He's always very well dressed. He represents himself and the company he works for, whether it's AEW or WWE, very well. And I feel like Cena is almost kind of, this is yours now type of thing. I feel it. I feel like that's kind of what's going on there. And I thought it was cute to see the two of them together like that. Also on Raw, the Logan Paul Rollins segment was pretty interesting. Logan Paul knocking out Rollins cold and Rollins selling it like a boss made that match a little bit more interesting. I suddenly care now. And Logan Paul, I think he's turned heel and babyface like 6 times since he's been in the company, but heel Logan Paul is so much better than babyface Logan Paul. Let the douche be a douche, because that's what he is. And he does it perfectly. Logan Paul is great at this. Great at this. And you talk about a smack talking heel who can back it up. Those are the guys that are always the most infuriating, and Logan Paul has got that. And I really hope he loses this match to Seth Rollins. I am tired of Rollins jobbing, so we'll see what happens there. Also on Raw, the courting of Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens continues. Owens took on Solo Sikoa one-on-one. We had a DQ win for Kevin Owens. He's then attacked by Solo and Jimmy. Sami Zayn then comes out and makes the save and offers to help Owens up, but Owens, sticking to his guns, still wants nothing to do with Sami Zayn, rolls right out of the ring and walks away. And I think backstage, he even told Sami, he goes, look, asshole, I've been fighting these guys for 6 months while you just sat there. You're going to have to do a lot more. You can't just come back now and say, oh, I want to team up. So Owens staying true to his character and true to his word and saying, no, I'm not just going to up and be your friend again. I told you I was done with you, and I mean that. And when he says that, you feel like he means it. So if we really are going to get to this Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Usos match at WrestleMania, how the hell do you get there? How do you turn Kevin Owens based on his demeanor right now? And we could talk about that in a minute, maybe a potential idea there. The main event of Raw was Jimmy Uso versus Sami Zayn. And I tell you, man, this was one of the best endings they have done to a Monday Night Raw in I don't know how long. Holy shit, this was good. This had me fooled twice. I never once saw what was coming, and you could see this play out in my tweets as this was happening. We had Jimmy and Sami one-on-one in the main event. Near the end of the match, Jey Uso comes down through the crowd, hops the barricade, stands on the announce table, stands on there and is watching the match. Way to be subtle, Jay. So he's standing on the announce table, this distracts Jimmy. Sammy is able to get a sunset flip pin on Jimmy for the win. Sammy then scoots out of the ring. Jay gets down off the table. He gets in the ring, and you can see, I mean, he's really conflicted still. You can see it all over his face. He's looking at his brother. He puts his hands on Jimmy's shoulders, and he's looking at him like, I don't want to hurt you, but I can't stand by you. That's my boy out there, or whatever he's kind of saying with the eye contact. And he just walks away. I thought he was going to hit Jimmy, and he just walks away from Jimmy, and you can tell this is killing him to do this. And he goes on the outside of the ring, and he stands there with Sami Zayn. And I had no reason to believe that he was going to turn on him, because we've seen the genuine love that these two guys have for each other on TV. We've seen that throughout the weeks. It's been beautiful. So Jimmy kind of mouths to Jay mouths to Sammy. He says, I choose you. I choose you. And he gives him this powerful hug. And it brought it gave me the WrestleMania 7 Randy Savage and Liz emotion. I'm like, oh my God, that's great. I tweeted out a GIF of a girl crying. 5 seconds later, super kick uppercut. Sammy's head goes into the 4th row. Holy shit, man. Down he goes, executed perfectly. Sammy just goes right up against the barricade. Jay starts attacking. You think I choose you? You think I choose you? And even in his anger, in his viciousness and his violence, you can still tell he's conflicted, which is just brilliant storytelling, and being able to peer that deep into someone's character that on the surface it looks like he wants to annihilate Sammy, but he's almost doing it out of frustration and anger, and just he wants it to be over, and he's got to stay with his family even if it kills him. And him and Jimmy proceed to beat the hell out of Sammy. Solo Sikoa then joins the fray, and the three of them do. You ever seen Office Space? The movie Office Space? Mike Judge, 1999. Jennifer Aniston. It's a great movie. They steal after they get fired, they steal the copier, and they take the copier out in the field, and they just beat it down while some gangster rap is playing, with a baseball bat, and they're holding each other back. The one guy really hates the machine. He's just bashing it with a bat, and he's being held back by his friends. They're doing the same thing here. They're pushing each other out of the way so they can all get their shots in on Sami Zayn. It was great. Cody then comes out to make the save and runs off the Bloodline there, but that was Jay's big turn. He finally turned on Sammy, and now he is back with the Bloodline, at least for right now. So the way all that was executed was great. Now you fast forward to last night on SmackDown, and we had, what did we have? It was just I guess it was a segment between the two, right? It was the Usos were cutting a promo. Jay kind of explained himself, and that's when Cody came out to the ring. The Usos enticed Cody into the ring, but then they are attacked from behind by Sammy, and then Cody joins, and they run off the Usos. So it's Cody and Sammy standing tall right now. So in terms of the Bloodline, yes, Jay turned on Sammy, and he's now back with the Bloodline, but at what cost? We've already seen Roman Reigns very upset, losing patience with both of those Usos, and the more cracks we have in the foundation of the Bloodline and the more frustrated Roman tends to get, the more abusive he's going to be, which is only going to further weaken the Bloodline. So right now, they seem as strong as ever in terms of them being back at full force, sans Sammy, of course. But how permanent is that really? Yes, Jay made the choice, and him and Sammy will not be friends again. I believe that, but at the same time, I think that Roman is going to continue his abuse. Sammy has been trying to show Jay this abuse of Roman, trying to bring him to the other side, trying to save him, so to speak, from the Bloodline. I can still see Jay harboring some issues about this with Roman, and now maybe Jay can be the one to save his brother from Roman. Sammy saves Jay, Jay saves Jimmy. And I still think, now that we have a few weeks left until WrestleMania, that idea that I've had for the main event, Cody and Roman, to have some ultimate betrayal by the Usos happen in that match, whether they walk away from the ring or they just flip him off and refuse to help him, and he's just looking at them, he's surprised, what the hell are you doing? And he's not paying attention to Cody, who comes up from behind and hits him with 3 crossroads and puts him down. and the bloodline, Roman goes down and the bloodline dies because they weren't together. Roman lost his title because the bloodline, he was too abusive and they turned on him. Something like that, I think, would be a great way to kind of finish the story and put the belt on someone new, with all sorts of potential opponents and a really fun summer, for Cody lined up. So right now, that's where I'm standing. Could Roman beat Cody and retain the title? Sure, I'd be fine if that happened. But I think they're starting to set the table for some big bloodline implosion, especially if you have the Usos drop those tag team titles on the previous night. Now, if that match is going to happen and we're going to get Sami and Kevin Owens against the Usos, how do we get there? How do we get there? Is this something you want Cody involved in? I do kind of like how these storylines are bleeding together a little bit, because Cody winning the Royal Rumble kind of put him into the middle of this. So Cody is now into the middle of this. The bloodline story has been so great, organically flowing the way it has. Do you really want to stick outside pieces in there if you don't need it? And so far, Cody hasn't been a problem in it. I've enjoyed the interactions and promos between Cody and Sami Zayn on TV. They've been really good, but I don't know if I want to overdo it. And what I worry about is Cody is going to try to make himself be the bridge between Sami and Owens. And I don't know if those two guys, with all of their history, necessarily need Cody to be doing that. Even if the character of Cody, his heart is in the right place, Sami and Owens should be able to work this out on their own without Cody, moderating it. So I worry that we might get some promo on Raw where Cody comes out and cuts and calls out Sami and Owens. Maybe he gets them together and leaves. That would be okay. But I don't know how much of Cody I want wrapped up in that. Because I like Cody and I don't want him to get any sort of overexposure problems or overstay his welcome with the fans. Just keep Cody doing what he's doing. Everybody loves him right now. Don't make any wrong moves with him, So I don't know how I feel about all that, but I feel like that could be one way Sami and Owens finally come back together. Or it might just have to be one more attack, maybe one more save. It would be great if Kevin Owens' family was at the show and the Usos threatened the wife or kid or something and Sami came to the rescue. You do something like save Kevin's family. That might be the debt that Kevin has to repay. Like, I said I wanted nothing to do with you, but you saved my family and I appreciate that. So let's go take down it's going to have to take something like that, for these guys to get back together on their own, which is why I do think Cody could be a part of this, but we will see how that goes down. The only other things we saw last night on SmackDown, by the way, was, of course, a Rey Mysterio promo where he came out to discuss his Hall of Fame induction, met with "You deserved it" chants, because he does. And before he's even able to get a word out, his prick son and his play party come out there. Dom talks a ton of shit. Legado del Fantasma then hit the ring. They've got a 6-man match later in the evening against Judgment Day, but they said, let's just do it right now. And they lost to the Judgment Day. Dominic actually gets the win after Rhea Ripley distracts and Rey is unable to do anything about it. Rey actually inadvertently distracts the referee, allowing his own son to get the pin. So that happened there. We also saw a funny finish or a screwy finish in a fatal 5-way match that was supposed to be for the Intercontinental title match at WrestleMania, number one contender IC for the IC. Sheamus and Drew both got pins in the fatal 5-way, and Adam Pearce later on then made a one-on-one match next week to determine Gunther's challenger. So now we're down to Drew and Sheamus. They're going to face again next week. Winner goes to Mania to face Gunther. I kind of want another screwy finish. I do. I feel like they're going to do one. We already got one last week. So that means next week, keep in mind, we still have a couple weeks until WrestleMania. So that means next week they'll do this. I feel like it might be a double DQ. It might be a double count out. Imperium might hit the ring and cause a problem or something like that, forcing Adam Pearce to come out and say, I rule that we make it a triple threat. So I feel like Gunther, Sheamus, Drew is most likely. And I kind of hope that it is, because months ago, I think way back in January, we were talking here on the podcast about possibly doing Sheamus and Gunther again and doing it at WrestleMania, because Sheamus hasn't yet won the Intercontinental title in all of his years in the company. And that would be a really great reward for him. He deserves it. Sheamus has had the best matches of his career just in the last 3 or 4 years. He's been terrific. He's been incredibly consistent, always maintained his look, his style. He has been just a trooper in that company and just Mr. Dependable in every way possible. And banger after banger, like he says. And I would love for him to get that moment. But then it started looking like Drew was going to get in the mix. Drew and Gunther, I think, is an awesome match. I have no issue with those two one-on-one. But part of my heart really wants that for Sheamus. So I'm kind of hoping that next week they just do some weird finish where Adam Pearce now makes it a triple threat. And if you are going to put the belt on Sheamus or even Drew McIntyre, you can do so without pinning Gunther and protecting him. So it's kind of like a win-win for everybody. So in my mind, maybe in a perfect world, I'd like to see Sheamus win the IC in the triple threat. Maybe Sheamus beats Drew in the match. And then maybe Drew and Sheamus feud for the IC and Gunther does something else. I don't know. Maybe Gunther wins and beats both of them. But I think if you have yourself in a position where you could potentially put the belt, the Intercontinental title, on Sheamus at WrestleMania, I would like to know why you don't do that. So I show me a downside to that. I think that would be great. Fans would love it. It would be great for Sheamus. It would just be great. There'd be so many great things about that. But Gunther is also really over right now. Maybe people aren't ready to see him drop the IC. I'm not either. I would love Gunther. There's a big part of me that would be perfectly fine with Gunther and Roman continuing to roll. But one of those guys, or both, needs to be dropping their belts, I believe, at WrestleMania. I don't think you can continue to go with both. But we will see, and Gunther could be a heavy hitter and a heavyweight contender once his IC run is over anyway. So that's what we had happen on SmackDown. NXT Roadblock was this past Tuesday. I did not see it, but I did see that Shawn Michaels brought back Johnny Gargano. He's going to be the one taking on Grayson Waller, who I think Grayson was responsible for knocking him out of NXT to begin with, right? And then he was released, and now he's back in the company. So that kind of makes sense. A lot of people were concerned that Shawn himself would be getting back in the ring. Happy to see that's not happening. And we also saw the debut of Dragon Lee, who was sitting in the crowd. Big-time free agent signing from a few months back, and or a couple of months back. Forgot when he signed. That's a big deal, and that signifies that we should be seeing him on TV any minute. And I know they've got, what do they have coming up? What takeover is next? I forgot. There's a takeover coming up, big deal. But as you guys know, I'm kind of checked out to NXT, as I am also checked out of Rampage, but I'm not checked out of AEW Dynamite. We hang out every week and watch Dynamite together. This past week was an interesting one, that's for sure. We had some interesting things happen on the show. Number one is we had the very weird backstage announcement from Tony Khan where he kind of showed up out of nowhere. And I was like, this is weird. What's he talking about here? And we had already seen a successful, All-Atlantic title defense with Orange Cassidy earlier against Jay Lethal, right? And so then Tony Khan announces in this very strangely worded promo about a rebranding of the All-Atlantic title, or a leveling up, as he called it. Now, this is done in co-promotion with the Warner Brothers Discovery and their Shazam movie or Shazam game. I kind of forgot or didn't catch all that. No, I don't know if Shazam is a show or a movie. Must be a show if it's on Warner Brothers. I don't know. Something about Shazam, and not the one with Shaq or Sinbad either. So some about Shazam and some co-promotion there, and they're going to level up. He probably said level up 6 times in this promo. And so they are going to level up the All-Atlantic title to now call it the AEW International title. And that's going to be, the new title is now going to be rebranded that. They've had a new belt made. And I guess next week in Winnipeg, there's going to be a international championship match between Orange Cassidy and Jeff Jarrett. And that will be essentially the first title defense of this new belt. So right out, again, right off the bat here, I've always been a stickler for clean and organized title lineages without too many asterisks, without too many just chopped up belt lineages or timelines or anything like that. And one of the big problems I saw with AEW naming their championships after the networks they're on is, what are you going to do if you're not on those networks one day? Do you really think you're going to be on TNT forever Maybe. I mean, WWE was on USA Network for nearly 40 years. It can be done, but I think it's unlikely. And now you're putting yourself in a position where you are undoubtedly going to have to change the names of your championship belts at some point. Because if you go to Sci-Fi or Hallmark Network or USA or whatever, or MTV, it's now going to be the MTV title. You know, who knows where you could air your programming in the future? Hell, you might even go to streaming one day. The YouTube Championship, I think we've already had that. Zack Ryder trademarked it. But I think changing your belts up is something that I find a little bit annoying. It doesn't look like the belt physically is going to look that much different. It's just going to say international instead of all Atlantic, but don't really know in terms of the title what it really does to the significance of the title of the belt itself. I don't think it does anything. It's just called the international title now. And apparently it was something that's been in the works for quite some time because they had a whole new belt made. And again, you know, regardless of how you want to criticize this, yes, the whole leveling up thing is weird, but you know, this is the network that they air on wanting to do more business with them. They just gave them an hour-long show that's going to start airing in a couple of weeks after Dynamite. Now they're doing more TV co-promotion and things like that. WWE does the same things. They're constantly peddling the USA shows and having guests from the other shows, and any movie that they're associated with, they got to bring people in to plug that too. So this is the same shit that WWE does, and this is the same way that companies can co-promote, cross-promote, and get their brand onto another set of eyeballs. It's all part of business, and it's just what you do. So it's a really weird thing to criticize them for. I think the title change is weird and almost unnecessary, but it's all part of this, you know, co-promotion. We just saw that. We had a whole goddamn Mountain Dew match at the Royal Rumbles. It's the same type of shit, and it's something that you're going to see from companies whenever they're going to be on cable TV or working for a major network. You're going to see crossover stuff, and it's probably a bad sign if you don't. If AEW was standing there on their own and you didn't see any other AEW advertisements or influence or anything on any other TNT programming, that would be weird. We've seen WWE show up on the bowling on Fox and doing all the NFL stuff. You know, there's all that stuff going on with the co-promotion, and it's good to see that from AEW. This is a good thing, not a bad thing. And I laughed at how many people thought that this was some sort of a sign that AEW was in trouble. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? It's the opposite of that. The network that they are on wants to do more with them. How in the hell do you translate that into bad? Is that how biased you are? Is that you really just can't think? Like, synapses don't fire and shit? Just common sense, man. Anyway, so the All-Atlantic title is now the international title. Enjoy. Also, we had the Blackpool Combat Club heel turn. Great stuff, turning heel on the Dark Order. Evil Uno coming out, Hangman Page coming out. BCC being heel is the way to go there. That's going to be great. Happy that they're heel now. And, you know, it's probably good for Moxley that he's doing that too, since he's pretty damn hardcore. They showed a promo from Danielson after the Iron Man match at Revolution, where he basically talked about going home. He needs to rethink his career, rethink his future. That's not surprising. We figured after this deal with MJF, he might not be around, at least for the foreseeable future, going and taking some much needed rest because the dude murdered himself in that Iron Man match. That match was so stupidly good. Maybe he regroups and goes and does a little bit of work for Ring of Honor. That would be really cool. Hopefully he can come back and work Forbidden Door, and his absence from TV is just a temporary thing for his character to get recentered and then come back at some point. But that was a little bit telling that we might not see Danielson for a while. And in the main event, we saw the TNT title match, Powerhouse Hobbs, challenging Wardlow. Now, there was some interesting circumstances surrounding this match because Wardlow got his car broken into, I think the day before, and got his clothes, bags, and TNT championship stolen. So I don't know why this seems to be a thing in AEW. Jericho got the belt stolen right after he won it. I remember a lot of us thinking, like, that's a bad omen for AEW. They just started, had their first show tonight, and they crowned their first ever champion, and they lose the belt. But luckily, Jericho got it back, and he kind of made a joke of it, and they were able just to proceed like business as usual. With Wardlow, we talked about, I think the day before when news got out, or I think prior to the show, or during the show, on Wednesday, we said that, well, they must have a spare TNT title around. We've seen multiple belts. Maybe they have one for Wardlow, but then he did the the interview on Dynamite, and he goes, "Oh, my buddies gave me a shirt. He's wearing an FTR shirt, and he's got nothing else with him, no gear, no belt, no nothing." And that's when he proposes the match now be changed to a Falls Count Anywhere match. I'm like, ooh, that's good. So that might be a cover for Wardlow not being able to do his normal entrance, and the belt is not there. They can pick the match up in progress backstage, which is what they did. They just went right to the back with Hobbs and Wardlow battling in the parking garage. So they were just basically in street clothes battling all over the arena. And I loved this because I'm like, ooh, this is good. Because I really wanted to see Powerhouse Hobbs win the title. I thought it would be great for him to be the TNT champion, but I wasn't sure how crazy I was about the idea of Wardlow losing the title 3 days after he won it. I'm like, but if you do it in a Falls Count Anywhere concept, you can do something weird. You can have outside interference. You can have a crazy bump. A guy can get buried under something or whatever to where it kind of leaves him somewhat protected. So I was much more open to a Hobbs victory once it became Falls Count Anywhere. What I didn't love, though, was the finish. Now, the finish, in terms of Hobbs winning the title, great, but I wanted it to be better than what it was. Hobbs and Wardlow were up on the stage now battling near the announcers. And Wardlow is then hit from behind, I believe, by a chair, with a chair, by none other than QT Marshall, who whacks him in the back with a chair. Hobbs then power bombs Wardlow off the stage, and I don't see that it's not a very far drop. So I'm watching on the watch along, and Wardlow, I'm thinking he's going off the stage, like to the floor through a table, but he barely falls like 6 inches off the stage onto kind of like a crash pad, and he's unable to make the 10 count. So I think so it was Falls County or Last Man Standing, whatever the fuck it was. He just doesn't answer the 10 count right. He didn't get pinned. So he gets power bombed through that thing. He can't answer the 10 count. Referee calls for the bell. Hobbs is the new TNT champion, which is great. This jacked up monster is going to look really good with that gold around his waist. But man, what a letdown in terms of the finish. Now, a lot of people are pointing to the long-term storytelling because this was all set up months ago with Hobbs helping out QT. So QT owed him one, said as much, and you knew that favor was coming back at some point. But Hobbs is a guy that's been, he's been on the rise. He needs like a boost. You can't boost him with someone that's like almost underneath. I don't know if I just didn't understand, like, of all people to have help him, I would have had somebody that would have made your jaw drop a little bit more, because I think most people, when QT attacked Wardlow, it was like, oh, instead of, oh, and because I loved the idea of Hobbs winning. And I just think if it would have been, I don't know, a bigger star or something, it would have been a much bigger deal. Unfortunately, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head who would have been perfect for that. But Samoa Joe would have made sense, or something, just somebody coming in and costing Wardlow that had a little bit more of an impact, because I felt like QT gave you more of a disappointed vibe. I'm like, that's weird. This should be a big moment for Powerhouse. It still was and everything, but I don't, I guess I was just hoping for more in the finish. The finish makes sense in terms of the story because QT, was just paying something back from Hobbs from months ago. But QT, every time we've seen him on TV, is a joke. He loses. He's whatever they call jobbers these days. That's who he's been. So the fact that he's the one now coming up, showing up out of nowhere after I haven't seen him in God knows how long, helping Hobbs win the title, I just wish it was somebody else helping him win the title. I guess that's all, because it didn't have the same impact, didn't feel as big, didn't feel as important, didn't feel as exciting. And I was really hoping that Hobbs winning the title would kind of be like a statement victory. Like, holy shit, this guy is going to be tough to get that belt off of, type of thing. But not that he still can't accomplish that. He can still bounce back with some nice title defenses here. Now we're going to see him defend this title on a relatively frequent basis. I'm sure he's going to win a lot of these matches, and he should have some impressive victories. And I think Hobbs should go on a nice, long, healthy run, few months. TNT title runs don't last very long, so 3 months, something like that. And then run into Miro. Bring Miro back. Where the fuck is Miro? I don't know what's going on in that situation. A lot of people feel like it might be Miro's own fault that he's not on TV. Who knows? I have no knowledge of that. But bring him back. He's so valuable. He would be great to be the guy to beat Hobbs down the line after Hobbs has a little bit of a run, and builds himself up a little bit. Now he's going to be a former champion in the company, can always go back to do other things. And I want this run to really, really help boost the stock of somebody like Hobbs. And I'm just not sure if an association with QT is really a way to do that, unless hopefully it is just a one-night thing and QT isn't going to be backing up Hobbs every week. Hopefully that's just the end of it and Hobbs can be out there with the title. But I think the whole finish of the match could have been done and executed a little bit better. And it wasn't one of my favorites, but I'm very happy. I think I said all night long that I was hoping Hobbs would win. I just kind of wished his win was a little better. Am I allowed to say that? I just wish it was better. Don't know how to describe it. I just wish it was better. Now, I've got some interesting news. Personally, for AEW, they are coming to San Diego on May 31st. Their first trip to San Diego at the Viejas Arena, the very same building where I got my vaccine. Sat right there in the middle of the stadium and got stuck twice. So they're going to be coming to San Diego for the first time. That's going to be great. That is the Dynamite after Double or Nothing, which I also plan to go to. Haven't, I think tickets go on sale like imminently, either today or tomorrow or something, but I'm probably just going to buy those down the line, StubHub them or something like that. So I do plan on going to Double or Nothing in Vegas unless something comes up. And then most definitely the Wednesday after that, when we're back here in San Diego, I'll be going to Dynamite as well. So stoked that they're coming here. That will be fun. I had a blast when we went to LA in January for the Forum show, and coming down to San Diego, we need to turn out and give a good showing here for that Dynamite so they come back. Should be a fun night, and hopefully I'll get a chance to meet some of you who might live in the area. Other than that, I'm just going to go to the chat here, knock out some more questions and comments, but let's just briefly run down what we have for WrestleMania. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm counting about 11 matches here, so help me fill in the ones that I'm missing. Cody and Roman, Rhea and Charlotte, Bianca and Asuka, Rollins versus Logan Paul, Cena and Austin Theory, Usos title defense against Sami and Owens likely, Gunther against Drew or Sheamus or both, Brock Lesnar versus Omos, Lashley versus Bray Wyatt, Edge versus Finn Balor, Becky and Lita defending the titles probably against Shayna and Ronda. Trish heel turn could be tossed in there somewhere. Damage Control could be a part of this. We don't know what's going on there yet, but Becky and Lita and Trish will probably be involved in something together. And then, of course, we have Rey and Dominic most likely as well. So that puts it at about like 12 matches, so maybe 6 matches per night. I feel like they should add at least 2 more matches, so we have 7 on each night, or 8 and 6, depending on how long these matches are going to be. But if I'm missing anything else, let me know. I think the angle and the story, or not even story, but the situation that I'm the least familiar with and most confused about is probably the women's tag title situation, because I don't know what's going on there with Becky and Lita being champs, but Trish then coming back. Talk of a Trish heel turn. Maybe a Trish match versus Bayley. What's Damage Control going to do? Dakota and Io. What's Shayna and Ronda going to do? What's everybody going to do? All I know is I hope Rhea Ripley squashes Charlotte Flair. And speaking of Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair, is it just me, or is that whole angle lacking a lot of hype? Did you see that slow motion match that Charlotte had with Shotzi Blackheart last night? What is going on with Charlotte? You thought you were watching it at like half speed. It was the worst exchange and match I think I've ever seen in my life. I cannot wait for Sol Ruca to eat Charlotte for lunch. Charlotte is going to have met her match when that girl gets ready for the main roster. Move over, Charlotte. Greg's a Sol Ruca guy. Make that t-shirt up if you have it. Incidentally, pick up some merch. Link is in the description below. Whole store full of stuff. Buy it. Wear it to Mania. It'll be fun. So yeah, that's maybe 12 matches there. I'm hoping we get 7 matches on each show. That's what I'm hoping, and put the card at about 3.5 to 4 hours each night. I think that's more than reasonable and probably what we're looking at. So we will see. Let me go back over here to the chat and talk to anybody who I owe comments to. A few super chats coming in, and I want to make sure I didn't miss any because I probably did. Where are we at? Who's next? Michael Kumo, appreciate the $2, my friend. Hey, Cena got a Fruity Pebbles deal from that. That's right. He talked a lot about that in the Rivalries episode with The Rock. And I found that one really interesting because, I mean, I knew that there were some bad feelings between The Rock and Cena and all of that, But seeing some of that backstage stuff, even Cena apologizing to Rock after the WrestleMania 28 match, thanks for putting up with my bullshit. There's a method to my madness. And what I liked the most about that is that John Cena owned up to not handling the situation right. And I think that's great, because Cena has, even though I've sang Cena's defenses virtually my whole YouTube career, I'm not saying he's perfect and he hasn't made wrong decisions here and there, but in the grand scheme of things, the wrong decisions he's made or the sketchy things he's done compared to the other greats there's no comparison. You just hear a couple of stories about Cena. He might have held down Alex Riley a little bit. Yeah, he shouldn't have won that 10-man tag at SummerSlam. But other than that, come on. This guy is not nearly what people were making him out to be. But he still had his views. He still had his opinions. And when he was younger and he was more ambitious and he was still, trying to be one of the greats ever, he stepped over a couple of lines and he realizes that now in hindsight, how foolish it was and owns it, which is kind of nice to see. He doesn't double down and insist that he was right. He grew. He grew from those experiences and says, I didn't handle that right, admittedly. And he holds himself very accountable for all of that. And that's kind of refreshing because most people don't do that. They refuse to admit that they did something wrong or they don't have something right. And they just can't do it. Their pride won't let them. But Cena's like, yeah, I was an idiot. So it is what it was. But it was a good episode, even though, and I was telling Elizabeth about it when they were talking about the next year, WrestleMania 29. I'm like, that was one of my most disappointing moments as a wrestling fan. I just thought that after that 3 WrestleMania saga between the two and how predictable it was getting at the end, they had a golden opportunity here to change the business NWO 1996 style, and they passed on it, and I didn't like it, and neither did a lot of fans. But it was a good episode, all in all. Oh, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Ben. And thank you to everybody else that is telling me that John Cena, in theory, is for the U.S. title. I guess I forgot that. So, yeah, that almost makes it, to me, more certain that Theory is going to win. I mean, John Cena being U.S. champion again in WWE right now, when he's doing all these movies, just doesn't seem right. But hell, maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe they'll do a one-nighter. I don't know how that benefits Theory, but you could have Cena beat him at WrestleMania for the title and then do a rematch the next night where Theory gets it back. But I think it would be better for Theory just to have that moment at WrestleMania itself, Jay, John Cena losing doesn't mean he's got to pass the torch. It just means he's going to lose a match. I mean, I think that's what John Cena should be doing at this time anyway. Until John Cena comes in to win a championship or to compete for one, then it shouldn't matter if he wins or loses. John Cena, there's no amount of losses that will ever not make John Cena a contender. So John Cena, even if he lets Theory beat him or he jobs to Theory or they put Theory over, it does not mean even that the torch has been passed. It's just a big feather in the cap for Theory and potentially a star-making moment for him. Cena will continue to be Cena. Cena will continue to run and continue to carry the same value. His name will contain the same value that it did prior to the loss to Theory. It means nothing in the grand scheme of things. So I don't think that he's going to be passing the torch or that jobbing means anything. I saw people after Revolution saying that AEW buried the Elite because they lost one of the most competitive 20-minute matches in wrestling history. They lost that very, very obscenely competitive match, and people thought it was a burial. That's where people's heads at. I'm not saying that's where your head's at, Jay. I'm just saying I think that Cena already doing it for Roman. Who says he can't do it again? Brock has put multiple people over, right? That would be like saying that Brock shouldn't put Roman over because he already did it for Goldberg. Makes no sense, right? So no, come on. You smarter than that, Jay. Ronnie Matthews. Oh, wow. Televised match since the greatest Royal Rumble. That was it? The greatest Royal Rumble 2018 versus Triple H. That shitty little exhibition that those two guys had is the last match, TV match that Cena won. Holy shit. Man, oh man. That's crazy. Thank you. Ghetto Boys is what they were playing in Office Space. Awesome. Thank you for that, Michael. JJ Leg, appreciate the $2 from you. Elite and Hangman versus Punk, FTR, MJF, blood and guts. Oof, man. That's a match right there, JJ. That is one 8-man bloodbath for the ages. Holy crap. Jay says if John Cena wins, he'll become a 6-time U.S. champion, tying him with Ric Flair for the most of all time. Hell, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see John Cena with that U.S. title around his waist again, but I just don't feel like it's going to happen. But if it did, it would be a pleasant surprise because I'm like, okay, that means, hey, at least Cena is back for a little while. But I question the point of him becoming the U.S. champion. I mean, at this point, I believe if Cena's going to come back and have any belt around his waist, it's the world title and the world title only. But who knows, man? I could be way off on that. Yeah, Mike, I feel like Kevin Owens might hold out, like Rey Mysterio might hold out to the last moment to actually get these matches booked. You are probably right about that. Unpopular take, says Mike. Danielson has been kind of a disappointment in his AEW run. It depends on what you define disappointing as. To me, the only thing that can mean is that he didn't win the title. Because in terms of the quality of the matches that he's had, the people he's worked with, my God, his matches have been ridiculously good. He's been doing some of the best work in ring he's ever done. So in terms of his run being disappointing, I think that only means that he hasn't won the title. Because if he did, I don't think that would be considered a disappointment at all. So I believe that he should have. I did a whole mic drop on it. I had a whole segment in a podcast months ago when it was Mox and Danielson. I said, Danielson needs to be the guy to hold the title. And I was wrong. He lost. So yeah, aside from him winning the title in terms of, I mean, for a while there, he was wrestling every single week on TV, working with all sorts of different guys he's never worked with before. I don't see any of that as disappointing at all. Maybe he could have won a title, sure, but when he wasn't winning titles in WWE, like if Danielson wasn't in the WWE title picture, you think about what he was doing in WWE. What was Danielson doing in WWE when he wasn't involved in the world title? Working with The Miz and shit? That's better than what he's doing in AEW? I mean, how do you define that? Disappointing. That's just what I want to know. Congrats to Ray. I second that, Janine. Let me knock out these last couple of them here, and then I got to get up out of here. Got to hit one from Population, and then I think there's one below that as well. Thank you, brother, for that 7 months of membership. Would you ever gamble on a match? I don't know if I would. I mean, I'd gamble on the side. I wouldn't go, like I said earlier, I don't even understand sports betting. I wouldn't go to Vegas or anything and like put money down on a match. I don't have any reason to do that. But if one of my buddies was like, hey, you want to put $500 on Roman and Cody? I'm like, yeah, sure. But other than that, no. JJ Leg, appreciate the 5, dude. Cena does a one-night open challenge. AJ comes out with Jay White. Holy shit. Yeah, you got to think about the Raw after WrestleMania. Could we get a nice big debut like a Jay White? Perhaps that even happening at WrestleMania. Who knows? But the next night, if you did do an open challenge and Cena was the victor, it could be somebody like an AJ winning or Jay White winning, and then maybe Austin Theory beats that person. I don't know. But that would be, you'd be jumping from one issue to the next. You would think that if Cena beats Theory, Theory would be hell-bent on getting that revenge somehow. And then if Cena then just starts a brand new thing the next night, I don't know how that would all work. But you got to have a place. If you're going to bring Jay White in, you need to have a place to do that. And I think the night after Mania would be superb. Superb. Empire Records, 1995. Come on. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for me. I appreciate everybody being here this afternoon. If I didn't get or had a chance to mention your comment or respond to anything, I do apologize. Actually, I'm not going to leave yet because before I do, how do I find it? There we go. I know I had a super chat or two from earlier that I wanted to make sure I got earlier today. Where are we at? There it is. It is from Off Leather Wings. That's who I missed earlier on. $5 came in here 2 hours before the podcast even went live. And I just want to answer this. Did you hear CCW is reviving Championship Wrestling from Florida with Kevin Sullivan? Gangrel and Bill Alfonso will be involved. I did not hear that. That's interesting. Hopefully it can be good and fun. I mean, I don't know how much, we've seen the NWA try to recreate that vibe. And granted, they've had their own share of problems with the management and the Tyrus and all that stuff. But, you know, I don't know how much of an audience there is for that type of nostalgia, but would be really interested, you know, in that revival and to see how Sullivan, you know, incorporates the booking philosophies of those days into a modern product with Florida Championship Wrestling vibe. Interested to see it, but I've not heard about it and have not read about any details about it. But that's interesting to know, and thank you for that. Also, thank you to the new Patreon supporter who came in a minute ago. I'll get you next time, but I did see that somebody came in. What's your name? Kenny Ward. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. If you are in the chat right now, thank you for joining the Patreon page, and I'll be shouting out those new members every time they come in because I have my notification turned on to let me know. So if it happens during the podcast, I will be sure to shout you out. I want to thank you guys very, very much for being here this afternoon for this long 2+ hour podcast. It was a blast. Don't forget, join us tomorrow night. We're going to be watching WrestleMania 16, WrestleMania 2000, a show without a singles match on it. Crazy. And an extremely disappointing main event, but we're going to make the best of it. Watch it anyway and enjoy some good wrestling tomorrow night. You guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I will catch you tomorrow night for some WrestleMania. Y'all take care.